Turn on your microphone. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting the June 12th HDRB meeting. Actually, it's the July 10th HDRB meeting to order. And first order of business will be approval of minutes from the last meeting on June 12th. We have
So moved.
we have a motion. Any issues with the minutes?
No issues with the minutes. I'd make a motion to approve them as written.
Motion. So we'll vote on the motion to approve.
Aye.
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 We have one abstention, the new member present. Go ahead and introduce yourself down there, please.
Estrella?
Ken? Okay. All right. All right, we have a fairly full agenda today. I don't think it'll take us that long. I would ask that you turn your cell phones off out in the audience if you hadn't done that, or put them on vibrate, and we'll get right into the first item, which will be a consent agenda item. It's in reference to benches in the park. You guys had a chance to look at that. This is something we normally, HRB doesn't opine on artwork in the park, except the fact it's attached to the park, which under the code requires potentially it come to HRB for some sort of approval. Staff has put it on the consent agenda. So we would approve that, and what would happen next, it'd go to city council for their review on their park system and whether it's appropriate, and they were the ones who would make the decision if it actually would happen or not. So
Need a motion on
I
that?
need a motion to accept the consent agenda as written.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda for item A. I'll second that.
Very good. All vote. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. All right, that takes us into our first application of 1608 King Street, and this is when you're going to recuse yourself on. Do you have a recusal statement? Make sure that staff fill that out when you're in the back, hand that to staff. All right, Mr. Staff, why don't you get us going?
Okay, if Jeremy's online, maybe he can put up the packet. Quick. There we go. Okay, this is 1608 King Street. It's about a 950 square foot addition to a non-contributing home. It's in the rear of the structure, so you can see that it's about split between a screen and porch and kind of a extra living area that's enclosed. It went to the HTRC, and they've also provided some extra documents, some extra images for this meeting. I think those got forwarded out to you this morning. No real changes, but essentially this is going to have board and batten. The roof, the colors match the existing house. Asphalt shingles that match the house. No trees in the rear yard or specimen trees will be cut. It is well above the floodplain, or the flood zone, the 13-foot flood zone requirement. Really, the only thing that staff is recommending is that they provide cut sheets for the doors and windows. Also to provide typical window and door details showing the window sills. Also to provide a clearer site plan just to make sure that everything is okay, and to note the material for the staircase posts, railings, and balusters. With that, I'll stop. And this would be a final.
Asking for final, okay. Thank you. All right, at this point, we'd ask the applicant if they'd like to present, tell us what they're trying to do. They can come up and present this.
Afternoon. My name is Thomas Henry. I'm with Woods Dindy Architects. And basically, the only thing that has not been addressed that staff recommended was the survey, and we have that ordered. So everything else is pretty much in order. We got the window details, door details, seal details.
Okay, very good. All right, if that's all we have from the applicant, we have the packet up here. We're going to open the floor to public comment period. If anyone in the audience would like to speak, like Ms. Lutz is coming up.
Hi, Maxine Lutz, and I'm representing HBF's Preservation Committee today with Lisa. We're taking turns. So we just wanted to say we're very supportive of the project. The one comment that the Preservation Committee had and recommendation was that perhaps the returned hip roof configuration over the brackets be eliminated. We felt like it's foreign to the vocabulary of the existing building and other treatments within the historic district and the Northwest Quadrant. The committee offered the following recommendations for consideration. Remove the current overhang configuration and replace with a shed roof configuration, which would be more in keeping with the architectural patterns of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lutz. Any other public comment? Hearing none from the audience. Anyone in the virtual world want to speak to us about this?
No, sir, no hands raised.
Let's call for public comment. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back up to the diocese for discussion. Okay. What are you guys seeing or thinking or hearing on this one?
I was just wondering about the fireplace, if there was a vent on it, because there's nothing shown. Is
Say
it
that
be
again?
An exterior vent, will it be vented? How will it be vented?
How the roof line is vented itself?
Oh, the fireplace.
The fireplace, okay. Well, let's look at, see what we've got. Now, we can bring the staff, they can come up, the applicant can answer the question for us, and we can
Yeah,
debate it.
the fireplace is not a real fireplace. It's, just for.
It's internal only.
Internal aesthetics.
Answers that.
To address a couple of items here as it relates to that, the roof. If you would go to look at that rendering, I did a few renderings that will basically depict, this is like a 4 o'clock, that one is at 8 o'clock in the morning sun shadow. The next one will be like a 10 o'clock, that's a 4 o'clock sun shadow for that space. So, and this is a 10 o'clock. So what we're trying to do here is to also address any concerns as it relates to, sun. So we're giving the client a nice space to be able to utilize during every time of the day because it has a southern exposure. So that's the reason we have that overhang. It is also going to protect for rain.
All right, while you're up, since you're already up, I asked a question. HBF's committee looked at this, thought that the continuation of the hip roof into that shed seemed a little foreign for architecture in Beaufort, and it is. We don't see that often. Is that articulated correctly, or is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's articulated correctly. And what I did was that I did go through the community and kind of look at some of the other structures, which you can see some photos. You see how you have a structure similar to that. This is the front, and we're talking about the rear of a property now, but this is the front of someone's house, and it has pretty much the same concept. Same thing here. So within the community, you do have some resemblance or similarities to what we put together.
Okay, I'd call that a stretch, but I will entertain it. Okay. Let's see, Mr. Bergman, do you have anything on?
You said there, you had the details for the windows and doors.
The last sheet, so in the last set that we submitted, it should be on.
810?
Yeah, there you go. We are reusing some material, some of the windows and doors. And so we've articulated that on the. Matter of fact, up there you see the photos of the.
So there's no new windows. Okay.
Right.
I didn't really have any issues with this project, to be frank. I thought there was a lot of detail that went into the notes and comments from HTRC and what's happened before. I think the staff recommendations made sense. I'm supportive of it.
Okay. I don't have anything further on that. You have anything on that?
I don't, I think it,
Okay. All right, well, I don't have any other questions being asked or any other debates, sound like on merits of this project. Can I entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
second
staff
motion.
conditions.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question.
Aye.
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 Okay. So staff, is that's approved with staff's comments, correct?
Correct.
All right. We'll bring up the next project,
Let me go, Brady.
which would be item B, 903 Harrington Street.
All right, this is a new build or a new construction at 903 Harrington for a roughly 1,000 square foot new house. It's right now it's a vacant lot, about a quarter of an acre, so a pretty large lot for the historic district. That's never had any building that I think we could find on any Sanborn maps. So 1,000 square foot house and then a carport and ADU and garage, as well as a pool. So that's a little bit of a difference that we see. Look at, this is in T4HN, so it is in that, in the northwest quadrant as well. Looking at the floodplain, everything is well above the, in fact, it's, the lot kind of slopes pretty dramatically, but it's almost double the 13 foot for the flood ordinance. Looking at trees, there's no specimen trees on site. There is a specimen tree that's right south of the property, so they are doing a tree protection zone when they start building. But looking at the project itself, if Jeremy wants to put the house up there, that'd be great. Thank you, Jeremy. Sorry. They are kind of proposing a 1-story with hardy plank exterior, the Marvin Elevate, single divided light. Let's see, kind of wood shutters, architectural shingle roof, and also wood railings, and a pretty sizable 8-foot deep porch. And so you can see the kind of the drop in elevation from that picture. So it definitely drops down quite a bit. And then the garage and the pool will be kind of in the back there. You can see all the comments that we had from the HTRC. It went to a few HTRCs, started including that just so you saw how the projects progress. Looking at the surrounding area, you just approved a house, a new house that was a 2-story house across the street on Harrington last month. But otherwise, you know, it's kind of an interesting collection of houses that have really no defined setbacks per se. So some of the houses are kind of far back from the road, some are right up against the road, but they're all houses. Looking at the, for new construction for the 4.7.2 integrity, the 7 integrity guidelines. I'll let you go through that, but I guess, you know, location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, healing and association. So, you know, again, there wasn't a house on this property before, so they're not trying to recreate or kind of be sensitive to that fact. It's also a very large lot, as we were talking about before, and I think staff in general feels like that the size of the structure and the architecture of the structure would fit with the nature of what's around it historically. With that, the staff recommendation is that basically to approve and to confirm that the metal gate and fences facing the street do not exceed 4 feet in height. Let's see, not a dog ear fence. That the vertical posts on the fence, that's kind of long, so I'll just be quick. So just the opaque wood fencing would be inappropriate for the historic district. Also that they clarify they're using the Marvin Elevate, and it was kind of referenced, but we just want to make sure, provide a cut sheet for the garage door and also for the asphalt shingle roofing. So they're requesting basically concept and preliminary approval. So there would be another bite at the apple if you approve it today with those recommendations. So they'd bring that back to you for final. That's about it.
Thank you. At this point, we bring the applicant up to talk about their project.
I think you shut up once he sells it. So that's basically the same thing that the staff, I mean, we kind of concur with the whole thing.
Sure. If you don't have anything to add, that's great. We'll see what the public comment has to say, and we'll get into a conversation up here. All right, public comment period is now open.
Maxine Lutz again. I forgot to mention a while ago or to ask the question. City Council recently adopted a policy, or maybe it was already adopted and they just made it clear that the public comments are not included in their minutes unless the person speaking requests that they be in the minutes and that a written copy of their comments are in the minutes. I don't know if that's the case with this committee. I don't know if you all include public comments.
We have been, Julie's here,
Yeah.
she takes the notes, but she's been including all people that speak in their comments.
Okay.
And we have been as long as she can remember, I think, so, right?
All right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. And I also wanted to say in regard to this project, 903 Harrington, that I think it's a sensitive and design that's reflective of the historic district, and we are in favor of approval.
Thank you, Ms. Lutz. All right, any other public comment? Anyone online wish to opine?
No, sir.
Okay, let's close public comment and bring it up here. We'll go through. This is new construction asking for preliminary, and they will come back to us with final details and hopefully meet all the staff requirements if that's the direction we give them.
Go for final on this one. As of the last meeting?
Well, we can, if you're asking me to take it to final, the staff recommended preliminary. You change your mind on that?
I mean, I think with the conditions, since they're mostly related to the fence, I'm pretty okay with that. Jeremy, are you okay with that? Our city architect? I'll make sure that he is.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
So,
Maybe he's not on.
He can
Okay.
spend it.
well, we'll ask, I mean, it's.
Can you hear me?
When the motion comes out, if it's for preliminary final, so let's beat the project up a little bit if we need to, and if not, we'll get right to the meat of it. Okay, thank you. So you were asking for final. They're asking for final, everybody.
Oh, can you guys hear me, by the way? This is,
Yes, yes.
this is Maria. I think Jeremy's, mic is not working right now, but we're okay with that, with the fence coming to us for staff. So just as a heads up.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's a project asking for final, at which point they would have to have all the meat and potatoes spelled out, and you have to be comfortable with the end product and then staff's comments. And right now, it looked like they've met the requirements for staff comments. The Historic Beaufort Foundation's board has no issues with this at this stage. Maxine, I can ask you a question, it's kind of out of order, but did you guys think of this as final or preliminary when you approval? Okay, thank you. All right. Well, let's see where the motion takes us. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, what do you guys think about this? New construction.
Well, could you clarify if it is Marvin Elevate or a different window for us? It is Marvin, okay. And what, you guys sent an email, I didn't get a chance to see it. I think it came out today with the cut sheet for the garage, is that correct?
Yeah, they sent some of those cut sheets too, and we sent that all from Julie earlier. I think was that yesterday afternoon or was that this morning? I can't remember.
I just want to take a look at that.
It should have been the last 24 hours. And she has the.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Has HBF had a chance to look at these? Would you like a chance? I'm looking at this garage cut sheet and it would only be like the top third that's visible from the street, seems. Am I crazy? Or is that?
No, it's
I mean,
on a hill.
basically-
I mean, you're gonna see.
I don't know that you're even gonna see much of the garage door from the street. Honestly, it's set back so far and so low. I
Right.
don't think you're even gonna see the garage in real life.
Can we clarify which door? You've got one shown as with an asterisk, but that looks like a glass.
I
All white.
believe it looks like they put so the pattern is the front pattern, correct, on the first sheet, and then the glass pattern is on the second sheet. There's a star. I think that's what they're indicating.
But it'll be white.
Mahogany,
Color of the trim, I believe, right?
mahogany.
So it's the wildflower honey. color. It's not- Clarify.
Color of the trim, I just don't have that in front of me.
So I'm a little confused. On the second page of the cut sheet, the base door, you put a star next to true white with the Thames window. The front page shows basically 2 8 panels with windows above, and then the third page shows a door with the wildflower honey. Which is which is? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the doors or
Well,
windows?
I apologize. I think I'm still unclear. So it's going to be a panel door with the glass across the top. Is that?
Correct.
I mean, I appreciate them submitting information to try to clarify, but it seemed like we should have had this information prior to. So we're not having to ask these questions during the meeting. We should have this information ahead of time,
Well,
but it is what it is. So. Other than that, I don't see any issues. I think it's a nice project. Because the site drops off in the back, the scale of the garage is even more appropriate because it doesn't compete with the house at all. So I think that's a very much a positive. So I'm willing to proceed with a motion with, if they, as long as they're addressing all the staff's comments, which I think they need to,
before you make the motion, only
whenever appropriate.
HCRC, when they met, did they talk about stormwater issues related to this type of construction and how it affects the adjacent neighbors? Did y'all get into that?
We spoke about that at the original meeting, and there's a actual drainage ditch on the back side of that property. Everything's draining down to basically a culvert, a retainage area that's been there for forever. That's functioning as such.
Front of the county building over there?
And once you go to the back, there's a fence line, and beyond that fence line, there's basically what amounts to a floodplain back there.
Because you look at the topo here, the entrance to your garage, and you got a plantation gravel driveway, it's pervious, but that's good, right? So no
Right.
concrete wouldn't work in this case, you'd flood your garage, but the bottom line is the house is to the right or I think that's to the south of your project.
Correct.
Adjacent buildings are 15 feet, so see, it wouldn't take much for you to cause a problem with all the water on that property missing the garage and going into the neighbor's yard. You know what I'm saying? The bottom of that picture's on the
Right,
screen.
I understand that.
I'm looking at some of the topo information here, and this is the typical Beaufort problem. Our neighbors come and build, and then they finish and grade and site change, and they affect the neighbors without even knowing it. And then all of a sudden, we have flooded properties and people upset, so.
I
It
think
almost looks like it would go to the bottom corner,
If-
that
if
northeast or
it's-
southeast corner of that property.
I wish there was continued the contour lines to the far right side of that sheet, because it's considerably lower as soon as we get off of our property again. Everything is going down to maybe the lowest spot around. I mean, it's low.
All right, I just urge the owner to understand their responsibility of building, regardless of who says anything about it, is that stormwater is a real problem in this town. So please don't make the problem worse.
I mean, we've got a swale down that side. I don't know. Are you suggesting that we put another drain in on that side?
Well, I mean, you got a pervious driveway, a whole lot you can do, but if you have roof leaders that lead off the building somewhere, they're the ones that cause the problem. So underground retention, or detention is the way to handle those. And not try to get every bit of your water, because this is what happened on this site. All the water is gonna go to the rear and it's gonna
Correct.
head towards your garage. I just be cognizant of that and, and try not to build up too high with your garage, but also keep it, I mean, the elevation's
Yeah.
gotta be critically correct. Or you'll have all those problems later that you remember me talking about.
Correct, I understand.
Yeah, you guys been building for a while. No, it's not new to you.
They'll be building it, but yes, sir.
So, all right, very good.
The-
So did you have a motion or any other comments related to this
No,
project? All right, so remember, this is for final, they're asking for. So that means they have everything that they're supposed to have. Staff's comments would be the only thing that would dictate changes at this point.
I wanted to ask a question of the applicant, because if we are gonna switch this to final, I'm in agreement with the staff's recommendations related to the fence panels and not making it opaque, but I wanted to see, did you guys have a rebuttal to that or a reason why you wanted it? Or any contention to that recommendation? What? So the staff is recommending that you nix the dog ear fence pickets. And that instead of them being butted up against each other, making the fence opaque, that you space them out. So that the fence is not opaque and that the posts are visible. So it looks like your fence panels are in between the posts rather than the posts being hidden.
Hang on. Yeah, if everybody here and be on record, I'd like to hear the dialogue that was coming back. So there's a question about the fence and its fenestration. Somebody want to tell us about that?
But the main thrust of what I'm asking is, if we give final approval, you're gonna have to prove to the staff that you're meeting this condition. And I want to make sure you guys understand what that condition is or have a chance to argue against that condition if you feel otherwise.
So you basically, on your fence, you want your boards separated so you can kind of see through.
Right, you need to be able to see through. They don't need to be offset,
Got it?
but they need to be separated so that the fence is not completely opaque.
That's fine with me.
So like,
Fine with you.
yeah, wooden fences designed that way, living fences are appropriate. What's not appropriate is chain link fence, for example, or wire without coverage, and also unpainted wood materials are not appropriate. Brick lace fences in certain applications are appropriate. Cinder block is not appropriate. Stucco walls are appropriate in some locations, but not always. But a wooden fence, you go down to Lowe's and buy a dog-eared fence, that's not appropriate. So that's why the staff is saying don't recommend the dog ear. That's in our Milner basic guidelines. So we go back to fences, a whole chapter related to that, or a small chapter. You can look through that and see some of the appropriate measures to take to do fencing. The most viable one in our city right now is like a Jasmine living fence. There's benefits to that, and multiple benefits, rather than something you gotta paint all the time. But staff has their comments, and we sound like we're agreeing with staff on item number 4.
I just don't want to get you guys approval and you go down that path to try and make this thing, build this thing, and then you decide that's not what you want and you wish you would have presented something different.
No, sir. Seems fine to me.
All right, it's time for a motion. Got one?
Well, with that, I would make a motion to approve with staff conditions
I'll second.
for final.
Fine. All right, we have that on the table. Any further comment? None. All right, call for a vote.
Start on that side this time.
Start on this side, Kim?
Yeah.
Aye.
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 All right, so that one's handled. We'll go on to 301 Carteret Street, item E. Is that where we are? Let's see.
The federal?
No, I think
No,
we're
we're on item D, right?
Yes,
That's
Item
C.
C.
Item C.
confirm it's 316 Federal Street. That's the
This
next
is,
one.
the next one up is 316 Federal.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so all but Ms. Petrella should have a pretty good background on this because you've seen it 3 or 4 times now. But first, are you recusing yourself?
I'm going to recuse
Okay.
myself only because I've been in
Okay.
consult with the applicant about the issues she's facing. And I'd rather not opine on it really.
And Grady will take over as chairman for this item. All right. So I think two of the three of you are pretty aware of this project. It first came before you in November, where it was turned down. And then it came before you in December, where it was approved conceptually, and then February of this year for approval. And that approval was to basically take two non-contributing homes and attach them with a new addition, with also some other additions to it. That was what was approved in February. In that time, the flood ordinance has, I think, kind of caused some problems to the applicant in actually realizing that addition, what was approved in February. And there's two main issues from the flood ordinance. That's section 54032 of the municipal code. It's not in the development code, it's in the municipal code. And that's, basically, you can't go over a 33% additional footprint, or you trigger essentially all of the flood requirements. And we strongly, you can obviously ask for a variance, but to obtain a variance from that is something we strongly recommend against, because FEMA rates us on how many variants we grant, and that affects everyone's flood rating for the entire city. So to resolve that, I think they're only 78 square feet over. And so that's a manageable thing that I think the applicant, who I'm sure will get up here in a minute, is understanding. And there's also a few other things they could do to mitigate that issue. The bigger issue, also in section 54032, is that there's a 50% substantial improvement requirement of the flood ordinance. And so that basically is that if you've made over 50% improvements to the home based on appraised value, then you also essentially lose the grandfathering, if you will, on this structure. So then the whole structure has to come into conformance. So this, I think, was really found by I think it was maybe not mentioned as much as it should have been at the HTRCs, or maybe at this meeting as well. But it's definitely been found as they've done the building, try to do the plans and start constructing the house. And so really, because the value of the two existing non-contributing structures is very low, and the addition is going to be extremely high, there's no way to get around this. There is, however, an exemption in the flood ordinance, which is quoted in your packet, and that's if the structure is listed as a certified contributing historic structure. So that's what is coming before you today. So the applicant basically has two options with this. They can either apply for a demolition, which we have discussed with them in an HTRC, or her, Ms. King, or to put this on the put those two structures on the contributing structures list. To do that, you would have to make a recommendation per the code, and I listed all the references of the code. It's let me just go to that, because I can't remember that section offhand, but it's section 9.11.1. That I would have to meet all those conditions. Then it goes to the city council for a formal approval. So you're making the recommendation, then it'd be approved, and then essentially the addition that you approved in February could be constructed. Or if this is not approved, then essentially that February COA that was approved for this addition cannot go forward, and she either needs to think about, the demolition or a new request with those two buildings. So the two buildings in
Or she
question.
could go through zoning, correct?
Say it again.
Or she could go through zoning board of appeals
For what, I guess?
for an exemption. You said you generally don't grant those, but
She could ask for a flood ordinance exemption, yes, but I think the recommendation is that it would be extremely unlikely. She does have due process to ask for it, but it'd be extremely unlikely that it would be granted. And so maybe we should put those two structures on the screen. So again, this is kind of a unique situation. I think from the staff's point of view is that these two structures are well over 50 years old, and they are somewhat unique. So if we put that on the screen, I don't know if the screen's freezing up, or I don't have access to it, but hopefully we pull that up. this would be this would be an option that these structures could be saved and then the original February COA could be built. And so that would incorporate those two structures on the lot. So as you can see, I think they're really kind of at least especially in this area, the only two structures on one lot like this. They're also brick, so they are somewhat unique. They are over 50 years old. So they would meet all the, I guess in staff's view, the requirements of 9.11.1. How you now that, if you do approve that, it makes it a contributing structure. No, as a contributing structure, then the question would be, did the approval in February meet the contributing structure guidelines? You know, I think that's something to consider. You might want to opine on that. You know, it's a very unique circumstance, but the end result would be that these structures could be essentially saved. So that's what's being asked today, and I'll let the applicant present their case. So.
Thank you. Do we have the applicant? Are they? You want to please come forward and add anything? State your case.
Lynn King, 316 Federal Street. The only thing I'm trying to do is not have to tear these structures down and go forward with the plan that was approved here. Having said that, I'm kind of done. I don't want to have to start all over again and come back with a whole new plan and be 2.5 years from now trying to find a place to call home. So my understanding and trying very hard to work with the city to find any kind of way around this solution was if we made it a contributing structure. And if that happened, then because of the approval that y'all granted, I would be able to move forward as soon as city council approved to start this building. If I don't get it, I'm going to have to tear the buildings down, which I think is a shame. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anyone from the public wish to speak on this topic?
Maxine Lutz, again, representing HBS Preservation Committee. And you may get triple comments here because Lisa and Cynthia are both here, but I will say that the committee is in full support of designating these structures as contributing. That said, the building should go through some review. They've never been documented. Why, I don't know, but they should go through a documentation process. I will add that there are some details and materials that should be recognized in this process of going through a review for contributing. And I'll list some of those. One is the modified stepped gable parapet on each end of the buildings, tooled brick that has a common bond, lovely brick, a brick denticulated cornice, gable end ocular vents, and a projecting cornice board across the top of the door and the window. All these construction details indicate a skilled brick mason who was referring to some historic patterns. There are some similarities with Olenta Plantation in I think it's Charleston County. But who was this brick mason? Where did he come from? We know so little about the builders of the historic district. Research about this builder, even if he was just working in the 1950s, and we think it was these buildings are probably older, could increase our knowledge about other builders. And regarding the bricks, they appear to be 19th century bricks, are they? Where did they come from? The ruins of another structure? There needs to be a documentation of the date of construction, the origin of the materials, before any consideration is given to demolition. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if Lisa would like to speak also.
The Preservation Committee, and thank you, Lisa Sunderla, Historic Beaufort Foundation. The Preservation Committee had a long discussion about this project, as did the HTRC prior to. And we support, as Maxine said, those properties being considered as contributing properties. What we don't support is that it go forward with the existing certificate of appropriateness. That instead, it should go back and follow the criteria and the 7 integrities and the Secretary of Interior standards, what our Beaufort Code and Preservation Manual put forward for contributing properties. And if you think of the reasons a building is listed as contributing, we look to our 7 aspects of integrity, because the 7 aspects of integrity are not just in our manual. They are the criteria used by the National Register, National Park Service Division, to actually determine eligibility of contributing properties. So if we're recommending them to go forward as contributing under those integrities, design, materials, feeling, location, setting, and association, then we're at the same time saying that those character defining elements that Maxine mentioned are critical enough and important enough as a part of the historic narrative of that property for those buildings to not only go onto the contributing list, but to not be demolished. And if we're saying that, then we need to make sure those elements are retained and that they're celebrated as a part of whatever adaptation or renovation or hyphen that goes between them. And the previous planning effort and approval did not take the 7 integrities into consideration because they were listed as uncontributing properties. So if it is deemed as contributing, then both the Secretary of Interior standards and the 7 integrities should be considered in a new design for the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, ma'am.
If I have to start all over again in order to make it a contributing structure and change the plan, then I will pull my request, make it a contributing structure. And the city has told me they will issue me a demo permit. I don't want to do this, but I don't feel like I have any choice. I cannot raise these buildings to 13 feet because of the brick. Can't go there. It can't be done. We've looked at it. We've looked at it from every single angle. So I'm doing the best I can do, but that's the bottom line. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Understand. Anyone else from the public? Anyone online?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, Maxine, anybody? No? Okay. To the members, do you have any thoughts, any questions, comments?
I'll start because that's what I normally do. I don't understand how the city would give a demo permit because it's still in the historic district. How would that happen?
Well, they're both non-contributing structures, so, it's a staff level approval right now. Now with the code changes, if those are approved, They haven't gone to the city council yet. It would go back to you, but right now they're still a staff level approval. So like the next case where you had to hear the demolition, that's for a contributing structure only right now in the code. This is non-contributing and it does
Okay.
not require a hearing. Does that, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. How far along are you with it's just in planning, correct? Or, but no ground's been broken? I am very sympathetic to the protracted nature of these things, and how long they take and how much money gets thrown down the drain going through process after process, and you have to work on the government schedule of 30 days and waiting for emails for people who are not necessarily the most incentivized to be quick with you. So I am very sympathetic to that. And that's part of why I threw my hat in the ring to be up here, is because I felt that frustration for some of my own projects. I would not like to see these torn down. But I also don't think that, I would be willing to grant them as a contributing structure, but I agree with HBF that the plans that we approved were not for a contributing structure. And so I don't understand, maybe staff can help me understand here, we can all opine on it. I don't understand how, if these were given contributing, if it was added to the contributing list, how the previous plans would still be effective. I would think that it would have to go through again because the conditions under which it was given approval have changed. Am I wrong about that?
You know, I think this is a very unique,
And I don't want to drag your stuff out more, but in the interest of being fair.
and I think we met maybe 3 weeks ago. And so I came up with this. And so to try to, because I understood that this was taking some time and I didn't want to cause it to cause more pain. So that's why this idea is before you pretty quickly. But I don't know that I've really thought through that, and I probably need to talk to the city attorney, but I think I would err on, the same thing, because this would be, a whole new category. It's likely going to be the determination, but, I think the hope of, maybe the applicant is that, that what was approved, it was still very, sensitive to those two structures, right? And
Well,
saving them.
And
so-
it could be that it comes back and we decide that the same thing's okay, but I would think that there's a substantial change to the context of the application. If let's say, if it's given a contributing structure status, that would have to be re-reviewed. Let's get, but what's Ben Coppedge doing right now? Let's fire up the phone, call him.
I would assume he would say, since it's now being categorized with a different set of standards, that, any previous approval was under the non-contributing standard. But again, this is a unique case.
Right, and so I guess my takeaway from that is we don't know what he would say. And so I don't think I would feel comfortable voting one way or another without knowing what the attorney would say and whether or not this would have to be re-reviewed. I think we would need that. I would need that information to decide one way or the other. Because I don't think it makes sense to put something on a contributing structure list for some, as a means to some other end, which is what we're doing. If we want to put it on a contributing structure list because we think it ought to be, and then we also want to review modifying it to make it your home, that can happen in due process, but I don't think we rush to failure by not fully understanding what the implications of making that decision are. And I think we would need that determination by the city attorney as to what the implications of that would be. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Kind of agree with you. It's a tough situation and, we just keep pushing it and stretching it out, and this poor woman wants to move forward. But yeah, to build it the way it's been designed, to add the addition, the way it's been designed, I don't think is appropriate at all for those buildings, if they're contributing. So even if they're not contributing, I just feel like it's losing all of the charm that it has. And so I feel like we need more information before we can move forward.
It's unfortunate it got to this point. The floodplain has not changed in the last 6 months, I don't believe. So, unfortunately, it fell through the cracks, so to speak, because somebody should have done their homework on this before it got to this point. And now the burden kind of lays with, with us or maybe with the city council. To the HBF, if I can ask this question, this property was not on contributing structures. I don't know if it was slated for the next round to be on.
It wasn't in the Milner update from 2022, but it wasn't in there.
Absolutely, please chime in. We'd like to get as much input as we can here because this is important.
Jenkins with Historic Beaufort Foundation. We had recommended to the Milner people when we saw their draft that this was one of the properties they had missed and needed to be added. And I can't remember if that was 2021 or 2022. But it was city council that chose not to move forward at that point and review the updated recommendations for additions of contributing buildings because they were working on the zoning ordinance at the time. So it's caught in a catch-22 that those buildings have long been considered contributing. And I've talked to the State Historic Preservation Office and they thought they were contributing based on the National Register criteria. So I'm not sure exactly how they weren't even considered contributing when y'all reviewed it the first time. I wasn't here. So unfortunately I was out sick then, but they definitely based on the criteria are contributing to the Beaufort Landmark District.
Thank you. To the staff, is it for the city council to adopt this as contributing structures? Recommendation must come through this committee?
It does, yeah. You have to recommend.
They can't override us if we were to take position against this.
They can override your decision. You just have to make the recommendation.
I mean, I concur with what the two of the members, I mean, this is a tough situation. It's unfortunate it got to this point, but when we, I think, and I included obviously in the review of the last design, we did not look at this as a contributing structures project. I know there were discussion about this. I know Lisa opined on this and probably others said, look, we should be looking at this more closely as a contributing structures list. But we seemed to sort of veered away a little bit from that because it wasn't. We weren't bound to those requirements, I guess. And as such, the final design is probably not the design that we would have landed on, I believe. Obviously, if it had, been considered or in the contributing structures. So that's the quandary, I think. Now, I know the applicant says she doesn't want to deal with it. I'd certainly understand that. I know you're probably you want to move in and live happily ever after, but I don't think I would, could support just unwinding that, so to speak, where we just now after the fact make the contributing structures try to check a box to deal with the floodplain issue and not have to reconsider, or we should go back and reconsider the design that we looked at and gave final approval in February. I know that's not what certainly the applicant wants to hear. She wants to move forward, but I don't think I would be able to support just after the fact going and making this now contributing structures without reviewing to some degree what we approved in February. And I don't think I need to wait on an attorney's opinion on that because I believe I would have looked at this design differently knowing that we were bound by those contributing structures parameters.
The only reason I'm saying I think we would need the attorney's opinion is if we approved adding this to the contributing structure list, would that require the existing plans that were approved to come back through this, or would it not? Because if it does, then I would be in favor of adding it to the contributing structure list. If it does not, then I would not be in favor of adding it, because then we're putting a patch on something and we're using a tool for an unintended purpose. And so my thought would be, we need to get that opinion, table it until we get that opinion, which I know is not what you want to hear. But I think that would be the appropriate thing to do.
Well, it's assuming that we have the authority, can we put a stipulation on, you know, on our granting or recommending to
I
get,
mean, I think, yeah, you could, since it's still just a recommendation, and then
would it be bound by our recommendation? Or could someone override that?
Well, let me interject real quick. If we did not recommend it, if we recommended against it, does it still go before city council? And could they override what we say?
it's an interesting question. I'll have to check that too.
Call up Ben Coffey.
Yeah, I'll have to check that too. Like I said, this is a pretty unique situation where, you know, we were trying to resolve a problem that is very unique. So, but I think you've given her maybe the information unintentionally, whichever way you go, which is that all three of you, a majority of you, feel like her final plans in February are not suitable if this is considered a historic structure. So I think you've made that very clear today.
Well, there's also a dubious, somewhat uncertain third option, right? If we don't know with certainty what the city council will say, we also don't know what the attorney would say, although I think we have an intuition that he would agree that it has to go through review again. If we did if we did recommend it for contributing and the city council approved it, then you couldn't issue a demo permit
That's correct.
and it would still have to go through review again. Is that a possibility that you would want to happen? Let me see if I can articulate it again. If we recommended that your property be added to the contributing structure list, but we made the recommendation that it needed to go, the plans that were previously approved, that those were no longer valid. If it went through the city and they approved it as adding to the contributing structure list, then you would be in a new catch-22 where you had to redo your plans. And if you didn't want to do that, you couldn't get a demo permit.
I think that.
You get what I'm saying? If we're playing chess a few moves ahead.
He's trying to make sure that.
I get what you're saying. I went before the technical review committee to try to find a solution to this. And I was assured in the committee that the COA I was issued, if I went forward to get this a contributing structure, it would be honored. I was also told that if you deny me today, that the city will issue me a demo permit immediately. And that was what I was promised in this meeting.
Okay.
They are trying to work with me so I don't have to tear these buildings down. But for me to come back and do all this again, and yes, I know that I didn't go to the city at the very beginning of this, and the buck stops with me. I rely on people to know what they were talking about. Doesn't excuse it. The buck lies with me. But that's what I've been told. Either I build what you've approved, which fits in with the historic structure we've made the modifications, we've done all the changes. Historic Beaufort Foundation didn't like the parapets on the original one. We did everything that Historic Beaufort Foundation asked for and what the review board asked for to build this new structure. I'm not going to keep going through it anymore. I'm done. Need it, but I'm done.
Understand.
No, and we're certainly, we're all sympathetic
me?
for that. So we're all sympathetic with it. We certainly hate that this situation. I think that the HDRB is in an untenable situation here. I think that from what you just said, the burden is shifted back to us, and this should be an appeals process, not back to the HDRB for this period, in my opinion. The city ought to have the appeals board looking at this probably from a technical standpoint, and HDRB should not be involved in this. And maybe I'm absolutely wrong, but we are here, so we have to address it or punt.
So I think we're at a point where if we table it, you're going to pull it and you're going to ask for a demo permit. If we approve it and the city approves it and somebody has some opinion that you you do still have to go through a new process. I think you have a
I'm gonna
case.
Pull it and demo it.
With all respect, though, if we had everyone come before us and threaten to remove the
mean it, no,
project.
I don't mean
No, I
it
understand,
that
but I
way.
mean, that's kind of, you've given us an ultimatum here, which I think is very unfortunate. If everyone came through and gave an ultimatum, I'm going to do this or this, if you don't do that, we should stay home. We can't make decisions based on that.
I don't mean it that way, and quite
Understand.
honestly, I'll turn around, if I have to demo it, I'll turn around and sell the property. I could build something on it with a demo, much grander place, and do all of that and turn around and sell it or do whatever. I don't want to do that. I just feel like it was unfortunate. We looked at the possibility, like I say, of even trying to raise these structures. Bruce went through everything. He called Columbia, he called FEMA. We've done everything to try to avoid being in this situation. And that was the only loophole in it, was to get it a contributing structure.
And I can confirm that. We have spent a lot of
A lot of time.
time in a short period of time once when the appraisals came back. And I think, like I said, I think a few builders were involved and, I don't think any of them really thought about it. And, this is a floodplain issue that we're talking about. And the problem is the appeal process of a floodplain is difficult to overcome, right? But it has this exemption. And so this is really the only option I think she has to move forward now and and I will take blame for kind of coming up with this solution. That was, she's correct in saying that, obviously my desire was, is Bruce's desire was to figure out every possible way for her to resolve this without creating, a loss of the homes, right? So.
So my position, this has been helpful because my position, is evolving as we talk about this. It seems to me that, there's two avenues. Either A, it's given contributing structure status and, that carries forward in time and she can build what has already been approved, although that, could be argued against, but potentially is the case. Or we table it, she demos, we don't give it contributing structure list, she demos. We give a contributing structure list, but she's not given approval to build what she's already been granted under the previous context, in which case she'll rescind and demo. So the only way to save the structures is to give it contributing structure status and hope that there's some due process and something is preserved in the process, right? Am I right in playing those scenarios out?
Yes.
That was how I brought it before you, but again, I think some things were kind of not fully thought about at the time a few weeks ago. And, I think, I don't disagree with some of the comments and that you're thinking about, once when this does become contributing. I think that's something that I didn't really fully think about at the
Okay,
time.
so with that, my question would be, if it's given contributing structure status, the city approves it, and the previous plans are honored. That's not necessarily what I agree with, but let's say they are honored, and that is above us. I guess my question for HBF would be, is that a more desirable outcome than the things just being demoed? I would think it probably is.
Well, let me ask a broader question to the applicant. If you would come back up, please. Would you mind? Yes, ma'am. Would you mind come back up? No, I'm sorry, the applicant, I wanted to. Yeah, please, if you would. And I don't want to get too much in the hypotheticals, and I know you want to get through this and we want to help you. I think everybody in this room is pulling for you. Because we've probably all been there to some extent at some point in our process. I know that you feel like you're at the point of just the heck with it. I'm ready to pull the plug and move on, but I haven't looked at your product since February, since we reviewed it. I remiss that I didn't do it before this meeting. And I think this is where you're going.
Yep.
To the HDR, to the Historic Beaufort Foundation and to you, assuming we do follow the pathway that's been proposed for contributing structures and assume we can get to the sweet spot of saying, okay, what you propose would be satisfactory, would be complementary to the two existing structures. Are you open to some discussion of looking, restudying to some degree that design and hopefully working very efficiently, very quickly with the staff or with, the Historic Beaufort Foundation to get back to where we are or where we were in February? So you can proceed without having to, take the ultimatum of demoing the buildings and or, just selling the property and moving on. Because I think I'm sure you're pretty wed to that property. I know it's a beautiful spot and you'd like to be there. And I think we all want to help you get there.
My concern is it took me until we started with the architect last May. It took forever to get to the point, to get those plans, to move forward and to get to this point. So I'm 1 year and 3 or 4 months into this. For me to go back to an architect, start over again, basically, and try to work with people and make these modifications and these 30-day meetings and all of this. I mean, yeah, I would love to be able to say, yeah, I'll work with you, I'll do that. But realistically, let's look at the time frame. I have lived out of boxes and storage units for 2 years. I've got another year, even if I start building right now. And realistically, how much time are you talking about adding on to this? And at the end of it, is it going to be what I wanted? Or am I just compromising myself out of the picture and what I was trying to do here? Because I don't know what y'all are going to come back and ask me to change and do. I mean, there were big discussions on this first approval that went through on the parapets. They were too high, then they were too low. And now they want to pay, I mean, I don't know. What are you going to ask me for?
Well, I don't know yet, but now, if I may sort of turn to HBF, and I know they're just part of this and we certainly want to make a decision, but I think this ought to be a fairly abbreviated process because we are this far down the line. And Lisa, I'm not sure if you have had a chance or Maxine and you care to opine, but I would think that 30 days, almost a stay of execution, if you will, for 30 days to at least reevaluate where we are, where you are, and see if there's any mid-ground or any pathway forward between now and say 30 days. So you're not going to have to wait 3 months, 6 months, a year. And then if it may be I'm sorry, I'm not disregarding, that we go back and we relook and reevaluate your design based on the criteria of the contributing structure. It may not be that much of a drastic change. It may just be some finessing. I don't know. But assuming we could find that sweet spot, then maybe, again, everybody wins in this situation. And that's what we're trying to do, is hopefully get the best outcome.
30 days. I'll give you 30 days to come up with, yes, this is gonna it'll work, okay? Either we can come to something that everybody's happy with, and I'm not gonna be another 6, 9, 12 months out before I build. I'm happy to give you the 30 days, but in 30 days, when I come back, we either say yes or no.
I mean, that's better than tabling, in my opinion. I mean, or we could table it based on that, but I think that at least gives us an understanding.
Is it realistic to think we can do this in 30 days? 'Cause
No.
I don't want this poor lady hanging on.
Well, I think you have to. In this case, I mean, what's the alternative? We don't want to lose the buildings per se, and we certainly don't.
If I can get with an architect and get with Lisa and them, and they say, if you'll change this, and they are not a whole redesign, and we work with something that's already been approved for the historic district, and in 30 days, we know where we stand, then sure, I'll come back.
If everyone in this room or the folks making the decision here are committed to saving these buildings in 30 days, I think they should be able to get that answer.
I think we are very eager and willing to sit down with Lynn and assist in that way. The ultimate goal, and best case scenario, is saving those buildings, and putting them back into a functional use. And we absolutely recognize that. And I think our committee, even last year, when it started with this process, had suggestions and recommendations of how it could fit within the 7 integrities and the Secretary of Interior standards. So I think we can definitely get together as soon as Lynn is able, and at least come back with, hopefully we'll come back with a collaborative design and effort that works.
And I would hope, Lisa, I know you will, that obviously apply the standards, but also look at the situation
Yes.
and not, and not, or work within those, within that reality, if you will, and to the, I don't know what the.
Just a thought, I don't know if Jeremy and Maria with Metters might be able to kind of assist, but it seems like the major issue here is on the, not so much on the government sector side, but on the cost and the time of the private sector side, right? She's going to have to hire an architect and turn over plans very quickly. And I know this is a self-imposed deadline. I think that's the challenge, but I think from our end, just maybe a thought is maybe she brings a design in 30 days with you that's not fully,
I don't expect it
just
to
a
be
sketch,
finalized.
just a sketch, and
Where
maybe,
you have an
maybe that
have
could be brought to
understanding.
you, and then before you make your decision and, give an unofficial blessing with the thought that, essentially it's going to have to come back to you when it gets finalized, but at least she has the comfort to know that there's very minor details and, sounds like HBF's willing to help. Maybe we can have Metters kind of help with some of, the forming of that design. I don't know that we can offer to do the plans for her, but
Right.
we can at least help with getting plans that we think would be approved. Does that make sense?
If
We're trying our best.
members, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's only one option at this point. I don't want to be held hostage to 30 days. When does 30 days start? Does it start today? Or does it start after the city council decides?
To the next meeting and at least know, yeah, this is gonna work or it's not gonna work. I mean, I'll do my best.
So if, I would be in favor of voting to add these to the contributing structure list, but I would want you to commit to also trying to make this work, because we're gonna commit to trying to help you make it work.
I don't want you to do it as a contributing structure yet, not until we're on the same page.
I agree.
We're gonna wait,
Think it's-
we're gonna table this for 30 days. It sounds like HPF is willing to work with you. We'll have Metters work with you to at least come up with a sketch, and you might need to talk to your architect to come
I'll
up
go
with a
back to my
sketch.
architect, work with Lisa and them and come back in 30 days on the next meeting. And we'll know then that we're all on the same page and that they support what I'm gonna do. I may not have every single final plan,
Sure, sure.
obviously, but we'll know whether it's all workable and.
Well,
whether
this
we
path,
can do
right,
it.
and that's what I'm trying to get to.
Perfect.
You'll know if it's
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah, I'll know.
feasible on your end or not.
Exactly.
And if it's not, then we have to make the decision and move on.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
I think that works for me.
Good with that?
I'm good with that. Thank you, though.
Thank
Thank you for giving us those
We
30
need to-
days.
I'm sorry, do we need a motion to
A
table? it,
motion.
or-
You need to officially table it, yeah, because she's made.
We'll make a motion to table for 30 days.
Table to the next meeting.
Second? Any-
Aye.
No further discussion? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right.
Just table that to the next meeting. I don't know if it's exactly 30 days.
You want me to restate it?
Yeah, that would be good.
So I'll make a motion to table that one until the next meeting.
I
Typically,
second
when
that.
you, if I'm correct, when you table something, it lays on the table until it comes off the table. It doesn't have a timeline. You could stipulate that,
Well,
but
You could, yeah.
Well, if we're gonna
you.
restate it for a third time, somebody else has to do it.
I think, state your motion. You want to say,
I make a motion to table it.
I second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, one recusal. All right, we close item C. We'll move on to item D, which is new construction, 1607 Duke Street.
Okay, this one's
Vice Chair,
thankfully
thank
not as complicated.
No, we-
All right, also this one also has some history that goes back to February of this year, which was Valentine's Day. So it was an exciting meeting on Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day that you approved the demolition of the two structures at this location on Duke Street. There was one lot. I think everybody's aware, those were structures that were built around World War One. I think everybody's aware of that. So what they're proposing here is the replacement, essentially new structures on that lot. So two structures on the one lot that were approved for demolition earlier this year. Those were contributing structures. This is zone T4. I think everybody understands where it is. The flood zone, it's got 23 to 24 feet. So it's perfectly high enough to not have any of the issues that we were just discussing before. Even those were for new construction, and they're only really removing two trees, a pecan tree that's not a specimen or landmark tree, so it can be removed, and a palmetto tree will be replanted. The two structures are basically similar to each other that they're proposing. And this is for conceptual. I should mention that. And I've also provided the HTRC comments from April when this was originally pitched. But those two structures, a little over 1,000 square feet for both of them. And accessed by one shared driveway. And I will admit, as a planner, I like shared driveways. So I think the recommendation, and I've heard a lot of comments about that. There was just one driveway on this property. You can see it on the existing site plan. That was kind of to the right of the proposed driveway. And I think there's some concern that maybe it would make more sense to have two drives on this to be more consistent. But again, that's of your opinion. This is just conceptual. They are proposing kind of hardy plank or cementitious siding, if Jeremy wants to go to that. Both one-story cottages, basically almost exactly the same, kind of wood steps. They were proposing what we saw vinyl windows, so those would be expressly prohibited. And this is conceptual in the Beaufort, the Milner manual there, the preservation manual. So we would, as you can see in the conditions, that's one of the recommendations. They're also proposing wood shutters, a asphalt shingle roof, and a standing seam metal roof on the porch, consistent with what was there before. Kind of two porches that are 8 foot in depth. And the foundation is horizontal wood like treated slats there on the bottom. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So we do have to use the 7 integrity standards that were kind of mentioned in the last few cases. So location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. I think we've talked about the fact that there were two structures from World War I era structures on this site. They were both single-family structures, somewhat close to each other. I think staff feels like these two cottages being proposed would be sympathetic to what was there without actually replicating them, which would be, not encouraged because it would not be honest to what was there before. Two, the design that combines the feeling and of the streetscape and the mass and the scale of the architectural elements and details. Again, kind of feel like the one-story nature of them, the size of them, and the fact that they're kind of sympathetic to what was there before, but not replicating them meets that pretty well. 3, the setting of the property, that's the physical environment of the property and how it plays and continues to play into the historic district, including the topography, vegetation, man-made features, and relationship between the existing structures and their settings. So I talked about the trees. Really, they're only removing the one non-specimen or landmark tree. So they've been seen, and they're replacing or moving the palmetto tree that's on the site. They are moving that driveway, as I discussed. That is something I think you can consider, whether that one driveway would be in keeping with the historic nature of it or not. I will say that my staff report was thinking of it from a planning standpoint. So if you want to opine, whereas we're always trying to reduce conflict points. But we do feel that the cottages are sympathetic to the mass scale and design of this former structure as well. So I kind of repeating that. 4, materials, that the materials are sympathetic to basically the historic nature of the surroundings. And I think we feel like that the fenestration, except for the vinyl windows, the front porch, the depth of the front porch, like the standing seam roof on the front porch, all those things would be consistent. 5, workmanship, which is kind of similar, you know, is there evidence of the crafts of the particular time period, et cetera, that ensures the fabric is retained. I think we've kind of talked about all that the same things I've talked about before, the vinyl windows, et cetera, that those were replaced, that we feel like this would definitely meet that, number 5. 6 is the feeling. I think, you know, we, again, have talked about that a lot, and association is there, that direct link, and I think we've kind of talked about all of the standards that staff feels would be necessary there. So again, this is conceptual, so you'll be getting you know, a few more bites at this. They could go to final, I think, if, you know, they really get all their materials, or if you have any specific comments. We don't have really too many comments about this other than the windows, but you know, you see that on your back page. There was just a few. Again, that we're supporting it, supporting what they're trying to propose. And just to confirm that the one thing that we did have an issue with, it looks like there's a slight difference between the 2 cottages, and we just want to confirm that, you know, are those the exact same plans, or is there, you know, a slight change with that? We couldn't tell that with reviewing them. Converting the hip porch to shed roof to differentiate the 2 structures. That was important because if you remember that the 2 existing structures did have some differentiation before, and then just that vinyl window, those are changed. So with that, we would recommend conceptual approval. So that's about it.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll open the floor to the applicant to speak to us about the project.
Hello, I'm Arnie McClure with Coast Architects. Thank you for reviewing our project today. I am working for the Freedman's Arts District on this project. Jeremy Weatherford is here with us, representing them. And they are working with the property owner, Mr. Singleton, Kenneth Singleton. And the goal of their relationship is for Mr. Singleton to be able to retain ownership of this property. It's been in his family for a long time, to create affordable housing and to contribute to the preservation of the neighborhood character and lifestyle. So those are sort of the 3 goals that were set in front of us as we began design on replacement cottages, if you will, for what was there before. And so I think what you see here did go to HTRC. And in fact, there were some comments at HTRC about the actual floor plan indenting the rear portion of the building so that the main gable structure that's parallel to the street stood out a little bit more, which we did originally there was not an indentation there, and we did change that in this structure. But the key here was to try to keep a simple form that is traditional to this neighborhood, which is the gable running parallel to the street with generally some type of addition off the rear. And so that's where this form comes from. And also, one of the goals is to make affordable housing, so we're not getting super crazy with anything here, pretty straightforward materials. And so we did that. I was able to, and since it's already gone over the plans, I will reiterate the plans of the 2 houses are the same floor plan wise. We have proposed a few minor changes to the front porch details. And I did receive some feedback from, of course, staff has given feedback, and from Historic Beaufort Foundation. If you'll note, I believe it's 1607 has horizontal rails, and I believe that has square columns, and 1609 has round columns with vertical picket railing. The feedback I've got from both the owner and HBF is they don't like the horizontal railing. They don't find that traditional to that neighborhood. So we obviously can change those. This is conceptual. We're open to a lot of things here. And then, but really it was just to try to give slight differences because the cottages are all typically fairly similar there. And so there may be some other things, you may have some input on that as well. And then the other comment I received from HBF, there were several comments about the shared drive, and I don't know if you want to go back. I think, Jeremy, you're controlling it. So if you want to jump back to that site plan. There were comments about, should there be two separate drives? There was also comments about the appropriateness of gravel and whether that will be kept up. We chose gravel because it's pervious for one thing, reduces runoff. And we chose the shared drive because we felt like the plan just worked better. But I will also, sort of new information after I was asked about, could we have two drives? This is apparently, based on the street signage, because I rode by there today, I haven't checked the right of ways, but it's a state right of way, state street. The Department of Transportation typically does not allow more than one curb cut per property. And this is one single property with two houses. So I'm not even sure it's possible for us to do two separate driveways at this location. We could certainly adjust the driveway. We may could adjust the width and the proximity of the houses. There's still some wiggle room on how all that lays out, and would entertain any thoughts on if there are concerns about that. And other than that, I'm not going to waylay. I'm trying to think if I've not touched on anything. Happy to take questions when you're ready for that, but otherwise I think that's it for now. So
Thank you very much. All right, so we'll now open the floor to public comment.
Again, Maxine Lutz for the Historic Preservation Committee at HBF. Arnie stole my thunder. We like these projects very much, and indeed, and Kurt also brought up some issues that did concern us, but these fit in beautifully with the streetscape, with the block, with the neighborhood. This is the kind of thing that we really like to see. Arnie was correct that we brought up the issue of the shared parking. That's not something we typically see here. It has rather a suburban feel, we thought. And there are ways perhaps to get around that. I appreciated what Arnie just said about one curb cut. I don't know what the regulations or the ordinance would say about on-street parking there for the second house, but I think if you all think that's important, we do think it's important to not to have a shared driveway. The other thing that the committee suggested was, as Arnie said, vertical posts rather than horizontal on the rear porch of 1609 Duke to be more in keeping with traditional porch railings and posts in the district. I think that's all that I have to add. Good projects.
Thank you, Ms. Lutz, for your comments. Any other public comment? Anyone online wish to opine on this one?
No, sir.
We do have another public comment. Come on up, please. Come up here where we can hear you. Just state your name and address so we know who you are for the record.
Sure.
Please.
My name is Linda Coe. I live on Adventure Street and Duke and Adventure. These two properties are right down the street from me, and I and so many of my neighbors are so glad to see something being done with these properties. They may need tweaking, they may need some changes, but we are very happy that someone has finally stepped up and is going to make a change in our community. And we're very grateful for that.
Thank you for your comment.
Welcome.
Okay. Last call for public comment. Any new structures? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it up to.
Just one, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we have one more? Okay.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Weatherford, and I have recently started with the Friedman Arts District. And I just want to say that, first off, thank you so much for being so cooperative and supportive of this project. It is something that obviously is very important. Not only am I with the Freedman Arts District, but I'm also a business owner downtown Bay Street. And we hear a lot of things, and it's very often that I hear people talking about how they wish that there could be something done. That is something I've heard a lot of times. And it's just nice that we can come together and get something done, because I do believe now is the time. And I think that we're set up to move forward, and I appreciate your willingness to do so. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I think that's the last one, and we'll close public comment and bring it up to the board for discussion. Now, this is for conceptual of 2 new structures. I want to start with comments.
I'll start, Mr. Chair. I looked at this the same way that a couple, I guess, HBF, I think the shared driveway, I understand now, Arnie, it makes sense from a DOT curb cut, and that may be a limiting factor, but the 18-foot width, it seems excessive. It splits the home apart, and it does seem suburban, and it sort of contrary to the scale of these 2 cottages, what I think you've done a really nice job. And I just think about the 2 buildings that were there a month or so ago. They were closer proximity, they related well to each other, and they were slightly offset, and I'm not sure why you almost wouldn't emulate kind of what was there. The cottage to the left relates better to the new, to its sister or brother than the existing house to the left. So I think the closer we can keep them together, they just strengthen each other, in my opinion. And whether you can do 2 curb cuts, the DOT maybe, that might not be a possibility, but 18 feet seems excessive. You probably don't need a 2-lane road there, if you will. Folks coming in and out can certainly wait on the other to get out of the driveway. I think 10 feet, 12 feet, maybe max would be more appropriate. And then you can bring these cottages together. The comment about the railings, the guardrails, whether you have 2 different railings, I would argue you don't even need railings. It's below code, and the simplicity of the cottages doesn't need a guardrail. And I think that you look at the homes that, of this caliber, most of them probably didn't, because it wasn't a code requirement. So I think either you simplify it, or just eliminate the guardrails on that, at least one of them, differentiate it that way. But other than that, you've got a really nice project. And I know there was a disagreement and some disdain about having those homes that were there removed, but I think now that we're looking forward, these are going to be very complementary placements, and it's just going to improve the neighborhood. And I'm very pleased to see this thing. Thank you.
All right, any other board member have opine on this one?
I agree with Mr. Woods' comments. I don't like the horizontal slats. I'm with HBF on that. But that's not enough for me to give approval for conceptual. I think it's a great project. I think the structures relate to the surroundings and the historic district very well. I think for conceptual approval, it's an easy yes. Just with the guidance to, maybe reconsider the driveway and those rails, but those are the only things that I would have any contention over, so.
Right, what do you think?
I mean, it definitely fits into the fabric. I do like the idea of removing the guardrails altogether, though. I think it makes it a little more different than some of these houses that, keep appearing, new construction that, have very similar front elevations. And I do think that gives it a little bit more difference. I feel like it could use a little, I mean, it's great, but it would be nice to see something that's slightly different that still worked with the historic district, but I definitely would not oppose moving this one forward, no.
Okay. Well, my thoughts are that the mass and scale have hit the nail on the head. You've done a great job articulating a style that fits the Beaufort rhythm, and I think that's important. I would like to see some design possibilities of altering enough to make them look differential, if possible. I mean, I think the floor plan inside can stay the same. They look very close to being the same, and if you moved them closer together, they would look like a tract development, which we do see some of that here. But there's a couple things going with that piece of property, and one is that it's on a streetscape that may or may not ever have street improvements done to it, sidewalks and stormwater and things like that, because of how it unfolded. Neighbors would love to have that Duke Street, streetscape finished. So this curb cut issue is gonna come up again and again, I think, but the height off, the elevation of these buildings will be dictated, I think, at the time of setting them, but I guess my point is, I'm not sure the elevation in the drawings are actually reflective of exactly what they would be, so the railings may have to actually be installed, is one comment, based on how high they lift them off the ground, based on the topography there. You go down that street, it dips down quite a bit right there, and you also have a neighbor to the west that's actually built up their property quite a bit, so keeping them low may have a, a visual impact by not raising them up another foot or so. But the flood stormwater issue will be a big critical factor here, understanding how that impacts this lot and what the setting these buildings are.
Well, there's 22-foot elevation.
Huh?
That's a 22-foot
Well, I
cut.
understand, but it's the street elevation I'm
Right.
concerned about, how the stormwater works down Duke Street. There's storm culverts on the other side, and the
But
neighbors,
as far as the height for guardrails,
yeah, and if they,
you're
right.
well above that.
Okay. The other thing would be the curb cut issue. The state does dictate quite regularly how we cut in. This is a single lot, so that one may be a hard hurdle to get over. But I like the idea of separating the driveways, and the reason I say that is when you rent these to different families, different, as affordable housing initiatives and things like that, you're gonna have, more cars than than you would believe. At least 2 cars per family would be average. There's some conflicts in the backyard, backing out and crossing over, and if you don't get along with your neighbor, you're gonna have some issues. So it seemed like you kind of, when you design something like this, you create a situation where you have some property management issues that you may not be able to overcome. So if you could have private driveways, I think it'd be a better project. I'm okay with it if you can't, but I'd like someone to, between now and final, exhaust that by at least finding out about curb cuts and seeing if the placement can be adjusted slightly to offset that. And I agree with Mr. Woods, 18 feet seems pretty wide. And you might be able to do a synthetic property separation with landscaping down the middle and do 2 8-foot lanes so that you actually create a situation where you feel like you have your own driveway getting to the back. And there could be a tree line down the middle of that 18-foot. That might be an option. I don't know. That would definitely help the feeling from the street on these 2 structures rather than having that big gravel parking lot down the middle. So as far as the conceptual goes, I'm hearing all positive things up here on the board and from the public, so. Does the applicant have any questions or concerns based on what they've heard from the board say, and we'll entertain a motion after that?
Arnie McClure, Coast Architects. Comment, and Grady caught it. I don't know. We originally did not have railings because we are less than 30 inches differential from grade. And both of these, and Mike, your comment about the grading, the site is dropping as you're moving west on Duke Street. And so these are set. I think I've got some rough elevation, finished floor elevations for the house on the left. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's slightly lower.
2 foot lower.
Yeah, than the other one. And we'll do some minor grading around there just to make sure we're within that 30 inches. But originally we didn't have any rails. And HRT, one of the comments was, agree or disagree that a lot of houses had rails in Northwest Quadrant. I could show you some photographs of some that don't. I think it would be easier maintained than wood picket rails. So we would love it from a maintenance standpoint to not have them. So I don't know, your comments were, are we to eliminate or consider eliminating rails on just one of them, or could be,
I
amenable to
would
both?
suggest you lose them on both, just eliminate them on both. I think there's such a, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Well, go ahead. I think
The forms are so simple.
Yeah.
Why overdo it?
I agree.
These are simple cottages.
In our final grading, we'll figure it out to make sure we're okay on that, but I think we can keep it we were trying to keep it roughly around 2 feet, just so initially we didn't want to do rails. And then the other, I didn't hear any comments on this, and there was a staff comment about one of the roofs being a shed roof on this, rear portion versus being a gable roof. We actually initially had done a hip roof on one of them and a gable on the other, just to make a little differential. And the comment was, don't do that, because the hip roof is not typical in that neighborhood that we received from them. So again, I'm open to, we can consider that, but I just didn't hear your conversation, so I don't know if that's gonna be a part of your conversation or
As
not.
far as conceptual, I mean, I don't have a problem with the roof designs. I just think trying to make them different would be a direction I would take it, one more stroke of the pen to see if there is a way to differentiate. I would disagree, though, that hip roofs are part of the porch designs in that neighborhood, so they are appropriate for this scale of a building. I did notice one more thing I'd comment on. You have your AC stand built into your porch deck on the rear, on the north elevation of 1607. And just in a practical sense, I've never seen that done. I think isolation of the platform away from the building will give you less problems in the future. I mean, just think about it. I'm not going to I wouldn't turn it down that you want to do this, but I think in a practical sense, your mechanical equipment should be isolated from the house structure, or you're going to feel every bit of the vibration of that fan unit through the porch deck and through the wall of that bedroom next to it. So,
And because the elevation, Arnie, you can keep it at grade. I mean, you don't have to elevate it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted
So
to
that's-
clarify.
it is conceptual. Any other comments? Get a motion for conceptual?
So what do we want to add? Do we want to add that they restudy the driveway, in addition to the staff comments? Do we agree with staff comment number Delta about the hip roof and changing one of them to a shed roof? I might be, alone in this opinion. But I almost think, they're similar enough. You do see some structures where you had brother-sister cottages that are identical. And the only difference is maybe what color they're painted. And I wonder if that wouldn't be appropriate for these, especially if you move them closer. So I don't know, if you're, on the one hand, it's differentiate them, but if you're only differentiating them a little bit, then to me, it almost does look more like a tract-built home. Because you see that in plenty of tract-built neighborhoods where you have like a tiny differentiation, versus intentionally just make them the same.
Agree. I think they're stronger. Like
Yeah.
that.
No problem with your comments on that. So again, it's a conceptual level.
Right.
Yeah,
But with that, I would defer, I mean, we've credible architect, I think we, defer to them on if they want to differentiate, but I think, that's, keep it simple. They're strong that way.
Well, I guess I'm not alone in that opinion. That's encouraging. I also don't understand how you're here presently with us and online. So that's impressive. It's impressive. I noticed that. So I'll make a motion to give conceptual approval with staff conditions, and I would nix the staff condition Delta from that approval.
In the driveway.
And then we restudied the driveway. Add that.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion that supports conceptual staff comments noted, except item D, and adding in a new item D, which would be study the driveways.
Yes.
Yes.
Way I heard that.
Yeah, and
Okay.
studying the driveways, though, I love the idea of making them a little closer and a little cozier, and that might totally change the driveways, which would be,
Might be able to do it for
if we
landscape.
can have to.
Okay. So we have a motion, any other debate, discussion, argument? No? Okay. Call the question. Go ahead and vote.
Oh, geez. Oh, aye.
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 Okay. We have a conceptual approval for the arts district. Okay, let's go to the next item.
Do you do a potty break? at
Item
some
E,
point?
301 Carteret Street. This is, I guess, a continuation.
Okay, this one also has a little bit of history to it. If you'll remember, last year, this is the City Loft Hotel on Carteret Street. Last year, you approved a 2-story rooftop deck permanent addition with the COA. Since then, and last month, they came forward with basically more of a proposal for the parking garage, kind of, I guess, to replace that, if you will, or to not to do that previous approval. And this is for essentially a pergola, an outdoor seating area. Uh, The applicant is proposing or proposed, and you know, there were a few things that were recommended, and that was kind of measuring. There were some ADA concerns with this area, measuring it and providing some more detail on the posts and the materials that were going to be used for the pergola, making sure that they met wind zone requirements, et cetera. And so the applicant has provided all of those materials. Let's see, they're, you know, I guess, metal posts, they're, you know, 4x4 metal tubes. The bar top is wood. It's proposed to be laid over the existing bollards. They're going to uplit LEDs. They have a fabric roof that we've looked at. And then they have 4-foot and 6-foot planters and screens with climbing plants that they've proposed, Carolina and Jessamine. So I think staff is comfortable with at least all the things that they have proposed. We do have some recommendations with that, and that's if you consider this, and this is for final approval, that really the first one is I think staff feels like because there are so many conflicts potentially with the ADA space for that small 4 by essentially, I think 17 or 19-foot area. That's not the square area, but the area that's to kind of the panhandle there of that kind of Oklahoma, if you will, section. I guess staff doesn't feel like that's really a very functional space, and it would recommend removing it from this. It would recommend not approving that space. We just feel like just too many conflict areas with parking, and it just isn't functional. That they provide engineered stamps, sorry, on the metal beams. They'd have to do that anyway before they got a permit. Sorry. And they're recommending a lighter lattice for the climbing plants, and maybe not as heavy planters that they're proposing. We feel that that's a little, I guess, heavy for the area. And so those are the staff recommendations, but otherwise, again, this would be final approval we should be looking at. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. We'll open the floor to the applicant. Mr. McElhaney, you want to come tell us anything different from last time?
Good afternoon. My name is Matt McElhaney. I'm the owner of 301 Carteret Street City Loft Hotel. I believe that Kurt sent me a number of questions, and most of which are related around the ADA compliance as the space he described adjacent to what he also described as Oklahoma. I have complied with the code. I think I showed in the second submission, we're at 198 inches in width, 18 feet in length at that space. So respectfully, I've complied with the code as to the functionality of that space for what I intend to use it. I think that really rests with the business owner. And I would say to you that I certainly am here before you to ask you to approve that. That's what I like, and I've met the code for ADA. I agree on the lighter wood, and if you have the packet before you, you'll see that, in fact, I wrote that on the sample shot there, and I provided a little piece of wood that would show essentially the size, or rather the weight dimension. As for anything else related to the project, I think I've put before you in the first packet and the second, everything that was asked of me. Unless you've got other questions, I'm here to ask you to approve the project.
Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. We may bring you back up.
Okay.
Let the public opine on this a little bit, and then we'll bring it up for discussion. Okay, you open the floor to the public. Like Miss Lisa Sunderland.
Good afternoon, Lisa Sunderlow with Historic Beaufort Foundation.
Matt has met with our Preservation Committee a couple of times and spoken with us about this, as well as the HTRC. And we appreciate the changes that he has made based on recommendations and or questions that had come up by city staff during their review and our review. And at first, we were initially concerned about the L coming down beside the ADA ramp, or the ADA handicap space. But I think at this juncture, we're supportive of it, and we see an opportunity for him to have a successful project at that location. His designs have minimized a lot of what was kind of bulky and didn't necessarily work originally with the design. The one caution that we have given him is, of course, about creeping vines or any kind of plantings and how much maintenance that requires. And sometime down the road, they may desire to change that out to a panel, a decorative panel that doesn't have any kind of vegetation to have to take care of. But otherwise, we are in support of this, accepting staff's comment about not having the side strip. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment? Anyone online wish to opine on this?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it up to the board for review for a corner cafe, pergola, something.
I agree with Mr. McElhaney, regarding the panhandle. I don't think whether or not staff thinks it's functional matters. I'm okay with it. I think it's fine. I saw their comment about the weighting of that piece, that lattice attached to the planter, which it does look heavy. I don't think that particular setup is great, but I don't think he's advocating for that setup. He's advocating for that color. Is that correct? So the color's fine. The whole project's fine.
Right.
I have to say, I like the panhandle, as you call it. I think it creates a nice buffer from the parking lot.
Yeah, the ADA stuff looks like it's in compliance. It doesn't bother me. Yep.
Okay. Mr. Woods, you have anything?
No, I think it's gonna be a nice little addition to that corner. I see no issues with it.
Okay.
I'm gonna drink coffee there.
I don't have a problem with either, and I'm kind of agreeing that I think the applicant's proven that he has enough room to manage his property for ADA parking, and if he doesn't, and he builds this and he blocks it, it'll be another price to pay later by someone else and not this board. But it looks practical, whether he serves on it or you stand on it and have a cup of coffee or read your magazine, doesn't matter to me, but I don't have a problem with it as presented. So I think staff comments are all good except item B, if we're all disagreeing with their comment on that.
I think B and Delta, because I think Delta was presuming that that cut sheet, if you will, was indicating that specific type of wood lattice. I don't think that's what the applicant's intending. I think he's intending to use that as a reference for the color of the lattice, not that specific.
Okay, well, they recommending a lighter material though. Okay. I think we've ready for a motion on this one. Would like to make a motion?
I motion to move forward with staff approval.
Okay, and
Recommendation.
item B on staff, make sure if you have anything you don't agree with on staff comments, make sure you highlight that in your.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve with staff conditions except for item Bravo and item Delta.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Further discussion? None. Is that okay with you?
Aye.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote on it then.
Yeah.
Go ahead and let you vote now.
Aye.
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 Okay. Mr. Michael Haney, you can go to the next step now. Pull out your checkbook.
Can we take a bathroom break?
Yeah, let's take 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, so look, staff, we're gonna take a 3-minute break, folks. All right, have we surpassed our 3 minutes?
I got you one. Great.
I got you, Dex. I found one too. Oh, thank you.
I'll invoice you for that one.
If you didn't find this.
Oh, you. One for me and one for my kids.
One for me and
Funny,
two
I'll
for
get
me.
it. All right, let's go ahead and bring this meeting back in order. And we'll continue with where we left off with.
Okay, yeah, we're moving right along. So 1308 Charles Street, this is, they're recommending conceptual approval, and this is for some major, basically to add a second addition on an existing commercial structure at 1308 Charles Street. So it is zone T4N, and there's the structure right now. I think probably everyone's pretty familiar with this building. It is currently non-contributing, and I was trying to find the age on it, but we couldn't really get I think, an accurate age on this building. It looks older than I think one can imagine, actually. But it is in flood zone X. The elevation is 17 to 18 feet, and they have not done a tree survey as yet. It is a conceptual case right now, but they'll have to do that later. Right now, it's a kind of a small lot, but the applicant owns the lot, I guess, to the south of it, where they park the kind of the tour carriages. So both of the lots really, I think, are being considered right now, but they're proposing to add and basically to structurally reinforce the existing 4,000, a little over 4,000 square foot building, and add another 4,000 square foot addition, second addition, and to turn this into a mixed use building where there's retail, I believe 3 retail office, coffee shop, something of that nature on the bottom, and then 3 flats or dwelling units to the top. So that is the proposal. It went through a few HTRC, both on 529 and 612. So you can see it received some extensive comments, and they made some extensive revisions since those HTRC meetings. And they provided, some 3D views. Okay, they got that there. So looking at it, they're proposing a stucco first floor on that retail section that I was discussing, and a brick veneer on the second floor where they're proposing the flats, if you will. They're proposing a collection of different window types, but again, the final details of those wouldn't be until preliminary and final. Glass doors, they'll retain the existing parapet roof. That was a big discussion at the HTRC meetings, as you can see in the packet there. Also adding some awnings on the 2 front entrances. They're proposing a standing seam metal roof with a barrel design. Also, they're proposing like an observatory deck that goes up to 34 feet high on that top of that roof. Otherwise, this is about 24 foot high for the second story addition. I think I've talked about the fact that it's well above the 13-foot floodplain requirement. Looking at the conditions or the recommendations here, again, this is conceptual approval. We kind of, I think that the proposed design, is pretty well in keeping and preserving the existing structure, or sympathetic to it. We would strongly recommend removing the observatory deck, because that would be by far the largest height of anything in that general vicinity and it's just not, that height is not established anywhere there. And it's a very minor addition anyway, or a minor detail that could easily be removed. And also removing the barrel ceiling canopy and supporting beams and posts at the front of the building, and replacing it with a metal awning below the larger barrel ceiling. So those are the 2 recommendations. Again, this is conceptual, so you'll see the preliminary and final, and there's a few more things they'd have to add, like a landscape plan, a tree survey, obviously, a base floor elevation, all of the details, all the cut sheets. Again, they're just trying to see that if this in general, adding the second story and the idea of a mixed use building makes a lot of sense to you. So again, it is non-contributing, just so everybody is aware. With that,
Thank-
I'll turn it over.
Thank you. We'll ask the applicant to come forward and give us a review of what they're thinking. Applicant here. Online.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Lisa Honeycutt, owner of the property with LRT Enterprises. And I just have to say HTRC and Lisa at HBF have been very helpful through the process so far. And as mentioned, I really, before we get deep into design development and all the details, just want to assure with this being such, well, for me anyways, a big project, that it's in line with what everybody, get approvals along the way as we go. I do have some concerns on that west elevation where it's being asked for that front roof, barrel roof to be removed, just in terms of that western light exposure into the residence, that I would like to entertain the concept of maybe just pulling it back a little bit so that we can indeed celebrate the parapet wall. But again, in design development, look into some of those details and options a little bit more closely, as well as the observation deck. I understand the concerns with that and the height. And again, would just, if as a more minimal approach, maybe consider looking at that as just a much smaller element that would allow light into that open loggia area that separates the flats, just to, again, bring a little bit more natural light in there. I think any of these parameters and make for a better solution. So I think the, idea and concern that the height is inappropriate. I think if we went with something lower that would allow light into that loggia area, I'm not sure you'd even really see it in true perspective. But those are my only comments. Again, we've are on a very tight lot, and just looking for the overall concept approval to keep moving forward.
Great. Thank you for your comments. We may ask some questions in a minute. It is asking for conceptual. So we'll now bring the public comments into view here. So we have anyone from the public would like to comment?
Good afternoon, Lisa Sunderla, Historic Beaufort Foundation. Hello, Lisa.
Hello.
Hello. Lisa has been working with us and also with the HTRC, and I will tell you there has been a transformation from where the project originally started. And through that process, and I think Lisa would agree, while she has an absolute love and respect for our historic district, she now understands the narrative and the history of the structure itself, and working with its sort of industrial commercial past of how it had been. And we have tried to do some research more on that property. And unfortunately, it was never included in any survey and never documented at all. So we were very disappointed to find that out. What I was able to find, however, was that in 1924, the Sanborn map does show the same footprint with furniture store written on it at that time, and with the same double lot that it has now, with two other dwellings that were on that adjacent lot. So I think that leaves some opportunity, because she still has that size lot beside it, to be able to create some other amenity to the side at some point that might help diminish the need for the upper observation deck. So that was a thought. But our preservation committee did review the project, and they agree with staff's comments, but specifically the concern with the carrying that barrel sort of awning over right behind the parapet wall with the metal bracing structure around it really kind of takes away from that parapet and the architectural element that is so distinctive with that particular parapet. And I think that city staff's recommendation to utilize the same projecting flat awning over it as they've got on the first floor level over the door is an excellent suggestion for that. And I still think would provide her concern about the light coming into that property and how to protect it. The other point I think that we had talked about was again the overlook, and those were our main questions and or concerns about the property. We support it. We support the second story going there. The goal was to really follow the narrative of the original piece of architecture, and in adding that second story, I think us and our committee thinks that a sensitive design was accomplished with doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll close public comment, bring it up to the board. This is conceptual view of a existing commercial space that I believe is zoned as neighborhood commercial at that end. C4N, and that includes any residential uses and commercial uses, correct?
Yeah.
So what we have before us, we're taking a modification, adding a second floor to a existing structure. Any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll start. Transformational. This is exciting. This is what it can be when you work together and you have good architecture and have good design. It's just amazing. I agree with what's been stated. I think that, and I appreciate what the applicant stated earlier, maybe reducing that to a clear story element on the roof, reducing it and maybe minimizing it just so she can allow natural light to come into that upper corridor. I think that's, hopefully staff would agree that, and Mr. Buford would also agree. I think that would be a good design change, and removing that barrel roof extension. I agree with all of those items, and I know this is not our purview, but I have to ask, is this on-street parking? How are they dealing with parking on this? I'm just curious. Because I don't see a site plan.
The property to the south is double the size of the current lot, and so and those were the four.
See the vacant lot, but I don't see any development of that as far as the parking.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to, they haven't provided a landscape plan and a full site plan, so parking would have to be provided on that lot.
It would be, so the residual part of that lot, that site would be on-site parking.
That's what I understand. Obviously, the applicant's online, but
And it would
I
be-
think they just haven't gone to that next step, and they just want to get conceptual to make sure that you like this idea.
But this is not unlike one of the next one. This is, parking is,
Parking is
Required.
required here.
so they, I mean.
Yeah, it'll be
approve this.
We can count the on-site, on-street parking that's around it within a certain, measurement area, but yeah. it has
But
to
if we're,
provide-
if we're giving a conceptual approval, shouldn't parking be part of this design? Because I know we're looking at the building, but I think it has to be
The lot to the south of it it's a decent sized lot, and so I'm
Would
pretty
they have to-
confident they can fit that in there.
Would they have to get so there's two things that they'd be doing here. I know this is a little bit separate, but this would be a change of use because it's going from commercial to mixed use. And then they'd want to use parking in an adjacent parcel. Would that not require a combination plat?
It's the same lot.
Oh, I
yeah.
see.
So
Okay.
it's,
Okay.
yeah, the other lot's
That's
like
helpful.
almost 10,000 square feet, so, I mean, I think, I think you're just approving this concept and,
and
you're
at the
not
next-
approving the parking, you're just approving
but that would be,
conceptual design.
that would be developed as this project moves forward.
That's correct. And, obviously in the conceptual approval, you're asking them to come back with all those details.
Yeah.
And they're not going to get through the process without providing proper parking requirements for the use. So I'm okay with just opining on the
Structured.
structure itself. And from the comments I have is I'm not really excited about the observation deck, and I kind of question, other than light coming in, which would normally be a skylight, why would you give up that much interior space for that feature? I mean, I get it if that's something that you feel important, but that neighborhood, that's a combination of a neighborhood of a streetscape, it's neighborhood commercial, that has some commercial zoning history all the way down that street. But it also has neighborhoods adjacent to it. And what are we observing from the observation deck? Just open air? I mean, architecturally, it just seems like an odd hat to put on top of that barrel, plus it adds some complexity to how to maintain that structure. I mean, I always look at it in the sense of what do you do 10 years from now with our climate? I mean, is that glass? I mean, I'm assuming that could be glassed in, but then it's gotta be conditioned. If it's not conditioned, it's a breezeway cover. I think they've separated I don't have a floor plan that really shows me how that's separated, but it's basically.
But I think the applicant has already gone beyond that with her.
You wanted daylight in there.
Right, but I mean, as far as the observation, I think that's now it's not an observation. She's conceded. That's just a clear story, just to bring natural light into the upper floor, if I understood what she said earlier.
Well, I was gonna ask about that, because I wasn't sure if she was, during her presentation, if she was expressing that she would be okay with lowering it and doing something that would still bring light in, or if she was saying that based on the location of the existing observation deck, it's not gonna be as obtrusive as one would think from the ground. That, I wasn't sure which.
Let's ask her.
Are you there?
Let's ask her, yeah.
Yes, are you talking to me?
Yes, Miss Lisa.
Yes, no, I have conceded in terms of the observation deck, and again, in design development, would like to just come in with, again, what I believe is would not even be visible from a street level in terms of just allowing natural light into that, open air corridor space. So I absolutely will, support the idea of getting rid of the observation deck, and during the design development, just look at creating a way to bring natural light into that loggia space. Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. That answered a lot of questions. Okay. The other question that came up was the barrel top at the front of the parapet. Well, I don't have an issue with the way it's designed currently. I like the concept staff presented with maybe a flat awning of some sort that matches maybe what's below the sign numbers. That would, and if it's the width of the upper part of the parapet, or maybe it has to reach all the way across the double doors, it'd still be appropriate, but I'm not totally opposed to that curvature design.
I'm actually with you on that. I don't know what is gained by getting rid of the barrel roof that protrudes over that deck and swapping it out for a shed roof. I guess Jeremy or Maria, what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Okay, good. My mic's working. Really, it was just more about the awkward. Visually, it just seems a little awkward the way that this is somewhat engaging, this front parapet, this horizontal component here. Just right now doesn't seem like it's well thought out. And our first thought was to pull that back, to be away from the back of that parapet, and then, as mentioned, to kind of float something else here that might be a little more subtle, but still provide shade.
I see. I could sympathize with that.
Okay, so I would say that if we gave them conceptual approval on this, we might want to have them, in addition to the observation deck, noodle on that, again, considering staff's comments. And if they want to come back with holding firm on their design, I'm okay with that. If they want to show us something that meets the staff's comments, that'd be nice to see. And then we have something to compare to. As far as overall, re-adaptive use of this building, I think this is an incredible opportunity. When I was a young teenager, there used to be a bar that I'd walk into, but I was escorted by a parent. So that whole end of Charles Street was a commercial zone that was, I believe different is today. It was Charles Street. So, but that's one of the last remaining buildings in that use, I think, down there. But, it'd be nice to see it turn into this. So I'm supportive conceptually. Any other comments related to what we actually see here?
Yeah, I agree with the staff comments regarding the barrel. I don't think it's necessary. I think it takes away from the original building. I like the fact that the brick part, the second floor is recessed back so that the front really pops. And I would love to see some other options for, providing protection from the light, but excuse me, I don't think the barrel vault coming out is appropriate.
So it sounds like we're all in favor of approval, but with the staff conditions, we agree with those staff
Yeah.
conditions.
That would be my position, just approve with staff.
It looks like everything staff said is what we're concurring with. Anybody disagree with that?
In favor of that.
All right, then the motion should be in order because I don't see what else we can beat up at conceptual.
Any motions to vote on today, Julie?
You want to, is it my turn? Whose turn is it?
Mr. Motion, we'll let somebody else do.
Yeah, it's Mr. Wood's turn or somebody.
I'll make a motion and we approve this conceptual, application with the staff's comments.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Any other further debate on that? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 All right, thank you, applicant, for a nice presentation.
Thank you. And I have to give a shout out to Adam Bury for the original barrel roof concept. So thank you, Adam.
There's candy in the back for you.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next one, which the item G.
Okay, yeah, this is 1406 Green Street. This is a conceptual, well, staff is recommending conceptual approval. I think the applicant applied for final approval. So just so you're aware. And there's one slight little error. I did put accidentally contributing home, but the rest of it says non-contributing. It is a non-contributing home, circa 1965, with a CMU exterior. It is in the T4HN district. This is essentially like a rehab of this house. So no trees will be affected. So the flood zone really, which is way high at 24 or 25 feet, also doesn't really come into play either. But again, a small house. So they're proposing to install a metal standing seam roof. Kind of just fix up this house to convert one bedroom to a bathroom. To remove a door from the side of the house, convert one of the rear windows into a door, and also to paint the home, and then to also remove the metal kind of columns on the front porch, to add board and batten on the front exterior, and kind of a tabby foundation as well. And so that's kind of a overall, again, it's a non-contributing home. It did go to the HTRC in April, and you can kind of see that some of the comments there that were discussed. I've kind of in there, the windows that they're proposing are the Colby fiberglass window. I think I've talked about the rest of it. There's a lot of staff recommendations on this, too many to really read, but essentially that's why staff feels like this really should be a conceptual level approval. A lot of the concerns are just, it does have that unique kind of CMU block exterior, and I think there's just a lot of concerns about changing that front and how it affects the historic nature of it. And also concerns about using a tabby for the foundation. That's just kind of not recommended under the preservation manual to be replicated. It's very hard to do. Just kind of thinking about different siding material, and also the Bermuda shutters. So, providing cut sheeter, they're thinking about that. Just there's a lot. I just won't go through them all because there's like 15 of them. But I'll turn it over to you and let the applicant make their case. But that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll bring the applicant up to talk to us about what she's trying to do.
Hi, my name is Lakshmi Poe. I live at 911 10th Street, Port Royal, and we bought this property back about 2 months ago, and we're trying to rehab it, and I want to say that we're very interested in keeping the ecological, historical value of the property, right? Um, so I'll address some of the comments that they made. The things that they care about a lot is the windows, the porch pillars, and the tabby finish for the foundation. Nix the tabby, like forget about it. I can concede that, and I'm very, I can really support smooth stucco on that. The windows, I had a window contractor come and look at them, see if they can be replaced or, sorry, if they need to be replaced or if they can be repaired. And it looks like they're in a condition that replacement is the better option. They are kind of like coming out of the house. People have like kind of broken into and unscrewed them so many times that they're like out of the house. And admittedly, I did not add photos of the windows in here, but I will in my next submission. We are working on maybe identifying a window package that maybe is a little closer to the 1/1 with a vertical bar, a horizontal bar through them. We're working on that. We'll identify that and get back to you guys. Then the porch pillars. Unfortunately, as beautiful and like original as they are kind of rusted through and they are bowing out. They are structurally unsound. Again, I'll show photos of them later, my later submissions, but they're rusted at the bottom and they're rusted to the point that they're bowing out. And in our home inspection report, they even reported that there's some like horizontal cracks right above the door. That's not visible in this photo, but we're going to meet with the engineer on Saturday. That guy will tell us whether or not these porch pillars are structurally sound. And maybe if they are, we'll try to keep them. Who knows? But very likely they will be replaced. The staff at the HDRC supported cedar wood columns, albeit narrower, 4 by 4 inch. I'm cool with that. I could also support metal tubes, 4 by 4. I could also support something like wrought iron that kind of like takes a similar shape to like a very thin tube and like circles and stuff like that. I can also support that. And yeah, I think that those were their concerns. And oh wait, the siding. Let me work on that because I feel like with what I got a lot of opinions that maybe we can just refresh it with just stucco finish. We don't need to do board and batten. We don't need to do lap siding. But the staff did say like, even though they don't support it, it's like, okay, they'll live with that, I guess. Yeah, that should be all the major concerns.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to bring it open to the public to comment, and we may bring you back up to ask more questions here in a little bit, but. Sandra?
Hello, Lisa Sunderla, Historic Beaufort Foundation. Y'all have heard me say this before. We are losing our mid-century modern structures within the district. This is one of those structures that is pretty much pristine in its shape and its form and its materials, excepting for, the existing roof on it. The CMU blocks are, appear to be in good condition, not even to the point that they should be stuccoed over, but they should be able to be celebrated as what they are. The windows are another character defining feature on this structure. And I understand that, yeah, they may need some work, they may need some repair, but without any documentation that the windows are unsalvageable, then it's really hard to say, do a wholesale removal and replacement of all of the windows in this house. We too were a little bit confused at first by whether it was contributing or not contributing, but I think the standards, just as they would apply to the two structures at 316 Federal, have bearing on this too because of those critical character defining features. The metal posts that are coming down again also could be salvaged, or they could be purchased, recreated. or repaired. So just because something's rusty doesn't mean that it cannot be salvaged and saved if someone wants to respect the historic narrative of the architecture and of the property. So I think that, the concern becomes, where do we as a community want to be with respecting our mid-century modern history within our community? Because by covering it with siding or covering it up with a stucco finish that it never had, by replacing the windows with windows that are not at all similar to what it had before, so no in-kind replacement of what had been there before or repair, and removing those columns takes away those key character defining features that really speak to the workmanship and the craftsmanship that went into that property, which was probably a worker's cottage, back in the day, in the 50s, 60s, when it was built. And I think that's an important part of our history, an important part of our narrative. So I will leave it with that. But we support her investment. We are very thankful for their interest in wanting to be a part of the community and the historic district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sundell. Any other public comment? All right, not hearing any, we'll bring it up to the board for discussion.
I have a question for Lisa. Lisa, are the steel columns, metal columns, are they original, do you think?
They definitely been back in the 60s. I'm afraid that this building is important to the bill.
I agree they should stay or be replaced with something almost a replica of that. It seemed like that would be, I think everything all these others are getting a little too farmhousey and, clunky in some ways with the 4x6 by 6 columns, et cetera. I think this is a very distinct look. I also agree with comment about keeping the block, just kind of keeping them in its purest form. I understand the issues with the windows and replacement, but if you have to replace them, why can't you try to replace them with windows that match what's there instead of trying to change it to, again, more of a low country 2/2 or 2/1. I think that it's so simple and crisp. I think try to keep it as close to that as possible.
Other comments?
I have I had some comments related to, the presentation, but I guess I have a more philosophical question for the board and anybody present that might be willing to share their opinion. At what point does something become historic and worth saving? Because this is mid-century modern and we're saying it's worth saving, or that's your opinion and Mr. Wood's opinion. There's some homes built in the 1800s and beyond that I think almost everybody would agree are historic and they in nature and worth saving. I could build a home today and modify it tomorrow, and nobody's going to say it's historic of the 2020s and ought to be worth saving. So if I build a home today and 10 years go by, should the craftsmanship of the worker man in the 2020s, should that be preserved, or are they free to modify as they please? And where is that threshold, and how would you think about that? Yeah, sure, please.
Currently, our date of significance or period of significance for our historic district takes us through 1953. And with that update that was just in draft form and never got to go through the full process by city council with public input into it, it would have taken us to 1973 with the purpose of including mid-century modern and recognizing the value and importance of that time period of architecture. It pretty much past that period, you don't have a recognized architectural form, specifically in Beaufort, but you don't really have a recognized significant architectural form that follows that time frame. And we probably have maybe not even 10 of the mid-century modern buildings left within our district.
So if I understand correctly, I know I'm monopolizing a little bit, but I'm trying to learn something here. So your argument, even though you said you gave dates that indicate it's about time, you're not actually saying it's about time. You're saying that, well, but you said there isn't a recognizable architectural form after the 1970s that's characteristic of Beaufort. Was that correct? So there's time, but it's really also about, is there a characteristic form or a defining form that's characteristic of Beaufort? And after mid-century modern, you're saying there isn't any one that's
The
particular.
1980s would not necessarily be something we would work to.
Include, even 20 years from now.
Recognize as significant. Now, this is an interesting point because one of the 3 criteria for listing on the National Register is 50 years or older.
Right.
Right? So that gets taken into consideration as kind of a given, you know, that you're looking at 50 years or older. But who says every property that is 50 years or older is significant or brings some sort of character defining element or feature that you want to recognize and you want to preserve? So it's still kind of building by building.
Right.
But I think we have to always remember, and it says this in the preservation manual, and I think the code too, that the district is the resource. And those elements within that district all have significant from the perspective of the historic documentation, the direction of the National Register, and where the recommendation was to take it up to 1973. But again, right now, the period of significance is 1953.
So we would agree that the
Right. Well, that's true and meets those 7 integrities. That's the, retain. Right.
So it's 50 years old.
right. No, I think I'm good. I understand. The point is 50 years, but then it also has to be something characteristic of an era. And I guess my point would be, that makes sense to me. I think the more important thing is it characteristic of an era and less important about the time.
And its own heritage and design based on those seven integrities. So
Right.
does that form offer some special workmanship? Does that form offer a connection to the past?
Well, okay, so I just think at some point we get on shaky grounds because everything will eventually be historic. So I don't know really how to
Let's
think
pull
about
it
that.
back up to this
Yeah.
conversation.
If I may, Eric, number, and I probably should have listed this for this with the 7 integrity. So number 6 is feeling, and I know that's, but it does specify this is the property's expression of the aesthetic or historic sense of a particular period of time. This particularly applies to rehabilitation projects. So I think that's the one of the, if you're looking for something specific that's in our code of the 7 integrities.
So 70 years from now, when people are doing
Expression of
rehabs, they're going to be doing rehabs of farmhouse style homes.
Well,
Okay.
okay, let's bring it back up to this particular project. Look,
I just think it is a relevant thing to think about though, considering this particular one.
well, look, first of all, we're dealing with what's in front of us, and what's in front of us is a non-contributing structure asking to get renovated and repaired and has some viable reasons why it needs to be done. The building is not in great shape. The windows are not great shape. Asking for a report, yes, fine. Get out and go look at them yourself or understand this style building and you'll know what's going wrong with these windows. Now, if it's non-contributing, does this board have the right to tell them what kind of window style they can put in? Or do they need to tell us what kind of window style they want to put in? So in this case, we can offer suggestions that would make this building look more attractive, but under the auspice of a non-contributing. In our Miller guidelines in the Northwest Quadrant document portion, which is how it sits, it states on page 264 that wrought iron columns not appropriate for all historic style houses. So they didn't, back when that was written, no house would have been appropriate to have this style columns. Now, if we made this contributing, then we could probably include those in that language. HBF shaking their head, but if you want to read the same manual, it's right in there. I'm not misinterpreting it. I've known all along, open CMU block walls is not appropriate in the historic district either on the current code, but we haven't included any historic structures to make that appropriate today. Right? So we're talking about, we're dreaming for the future, but that's not where we're at. We're here in the now. And the now says this is a non-contributing structure that the owner has a right to do certain things with. And the stuff that this board has to opine on is what are within those rights and reasons. And so we're not making it historic. So I don't personally have a problem changing the columns or leaving the columns if the owner wants to put them back. I don't have a problem either way. That's my position. The windows, I don't have a problem with them putting the same exact window back in the hole. But if they came to me with an option, I'd like to see what that option is. This is conceptual. As far as the siding goes, this is a cinder block, exposed pointed cinder block. It's not even appropriate in the district now. If you built a home today, you couldn't build it like this. So what do we tell them? If they want to put a stucco finish on it? No. I mean, it used to be we try to get them to cover up all that cinder block and do a stucco finish. So we didn't see the cinder. Now we're saying, well, maybe we should leave it because it may be contributing one day. Well, it's not at the moment. Okay. So I'm supportive of the owner going the direction they want to go. I think the discussion ought to be about the board and bat. Is it appropriate? It would be appropriate for a mid-century modern if you're going to consider I don't consider this a mid-century modern. It could be. If that's what it is, we need to bring some into the district, then we'll have better guidelines to go by. But in the meantime, board and bat, I think a stucco finish would look better, but we have board and bat in the district. So we opposed to that?
I just want to push back on one thing. I think I agree with the arguments you just made, and I think that's why it's better to try and find solid ground philosophically, because there is this back and forth of we wouldn't approve a concrete wall building today. Stucco is okay, but it's not okay, and then it's not okay. So it's hard to find solid ground when every 50 years something becomes historic. What are we trying to say? So anyway, that's all aside. Maybe we'll grab lunch and education and talk about that. But
If you notice the recommendations, it's just what's being proposed.
I know,
It's not saying that they
I'm
have
gonna
to
bring it
stay
back
with
to
CMU, or it's not saying, I mean, other than the tabby, I think it's recommending that maybe there's an alternative that they look at for the windows and.
Right.
And, but I think we wanted to give them the ability to kind of be creative.
Understand. I'm gonna bring it back to that. I did want to share that perspective and see what kind of the crowd thought. I mostly agree with the staff recommendations. I can talk about each one, but I'll give the floor to somebody else since I've been monopolizing.
Can we pull up the existing photograph of the elevation? Okay, so this is such a great example of what would have been built in 1965. The windows are still intact. I mean, it's pretty pure in its form. And the fact that a lot of it hasn't been renovated over time, I think is great. And I agree with the fact that, not all of Beaufort should look like a house that was built in the 1890s. These were important periods in time, and I'm sure there were many more of them. And there's not that many of them that still have all the original stuff. So the owner, I mean, she seemed pretty open to, try and, work with us and to preserve as much of it as possible. And I think that would be amazing. Yes, you could stucco it and board and batten it and put columns on it, but I don't know. We just don't have many more of these anymore. And I think it's really important to recognize that, yeah, even though, it was 1965, it was important at the time. And it's important to know that, yeah, people that lived here at that time, this is what they built, and, just saying.
It's a fair opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I think the staff is fairly reasonable here. I think they're recommending some things. They're not, they're not forcing the exact solution, but
Yeah, I don't think
I would support the recommendations and hope the applicant would
It's a great.
embrace this process and got a little.
But we do have question like item J you need to look at and make sure we understand that on the staff comment. So that's probably the one that, the biggest change that might just need to be clarity, and it may be just a drawing, you know, the sketch drawing shows rafter tails.
Right.
I think that was probably missed. I think,
It's
I
it's a
wonder.
closed soffit building,
Yeah.
so the reality is if you can repair it, you know, we have to opine, it's non-contributing. You want to allow them to take the soffits loose and expose tails and make it look like a Beaufort cottage? We can do that. If you want to, tell them you love the form and you're going to call it mid-century modern and you like the wrought iron stuff and it's there, so you're not going to make them take it off, that's fine too. You want to allow them to do columns? Nothing in the code says they can't. It's your
Well,
decision.
If, and the applicant, but she's here, she can still respond again, but what I heard was she was open to ideas, for alternates, and not just one, so would you mind?
Yeah.
Mind?
Come up and tell us what you agree or disagree with on staff comments, or what are you really trying to get done here that you would like to see us approve?
For the rafters specifically or in general?
General.
Well, the columns, the rafters, the,
I'm more interested
No,
in
I
general.
get the idea.
Yeah. What
So,
are we trying to achieve in general?
I'd like the exposed rafters. I think it's kind of cool that it's a Beaufort cottage, especially because the soffits are all rotted. But I want to make a very clear distinction. Right now, this house is mid-century. We're bringing it to mid-century modern. And for that, some elements have to change, but there must be respect for what it was before. And in order for it to get to be a historical property, it must last that long. Like it, with climate change and everything, you gotta have a strong little house that's gonna last another 50 years. It's a cinder block house, it's gonna have a metal roof, and it's gonna have windows that aren't made of rotted wood, that wrought iron pillars that aren't made of rusty iron, in order to make it that far. And that's my hypothesis. But yeah, that's the general direction I'm going in. Yeah.
You like the way the house looks? Is that what?
I need it to be a strong little house. I think that that's what I want it to look like. And I really I like that you know, when it's like that single pane glass, it's like extra shiny. You can see through it much clearer. But like at the same time, I go up next to it and I can see the hole through the other side and I'm like, oh, I wouldn't feel really safe even sleeping here, you know? When I swept out and cleaned out the whole place, it was covered in cockroaches. And, you know, I don't know, I got to do something about it. Yeah.
I think you have a very special little place there, honestly.
So you looked over the staff's comments. Is there anything in the staff's comments you don't agree with?
I kind of want to reserve the right to think about it and like bring in as much of their comments as I can. But I kind of agree with the no tab. Oh, sorry. I kind of agree with the no tabby. I want to try and keep metal elements at least in the pillars, and I want to try and keep the 1/1 and horizontal bar. That's what I want to try and keep. But I have to talk to contractors. I have to figure out what the cost is. I have to figure out the stuff. So
Well, all that's achievable. I mean,
Yeah.
you can get the exact window made today, go back in the same hole, look exactly the same. You can get the wrought iron rails. They may not be the quality steel what these were made of, but you can buy those today. You can find them in the recycle stores even. So they're doable. I think the biggest question was changing siding styles was a big one because that's
Yep.
really an architectural change that we need to know about. You're going from asphalt shingle roof to a metal roof. You know, would have this building had a standing seam metal roof on it, a hand crimp roof? No, it wouldn't have. Would have had a 5B metal roof? Probably not. Asphalt shingles of the era with a 3-tab was probably what was put on there, the very first shingle on this roof.
Mhm.
So
you
you're
think
asking.
with simple materials, like simple,
Yes,
like.
but
the
you're
cheapest
asking
things
for
possible.
metal standing seam roof, which I'm okay to approve,
Mm.
but it does change dramatically the look of this building.
Mm.
The stucco would change the look of the building. The column would change the look, the windows change. Staff did a pretty good job on this one as far as the recommendations go. I just want to make sure we're clear of things you're trying to do on a non-contributing structure to see if we're blocking you from doing those or giving you better advice or different advice.
Actually, like, I don't feel like it's a block. I kind of like, when we put forward the plan, we just kind of like looked around the houses in the area and come up with like, okay, this is what I think would look good for the area. This is marketable. This is like the style, the trend or whatever. And they told me about all these elements, and they just, I don't know, we just hadn't explored the possibilities. That's it.
Well, I would tell you that, in my opinion, if you were to leave everything alone except the rafter tails, I wouldn't approve it. I mean, I just don't think taking the soffits off that building to make rafter tail look fits any of the other architecture on the building. So
Fair enough.
if that was something you wanted to hold on to, I'd say, I'm sorry, I can't support that. If you go down the path of keeping it just like it is, I'm 100% fine with that. But I do know that because of you're the owner and it is non-contributing at this point in history, this board has the right to allow you to do things to it you wouldn't be able to do if it was already on the contributing structure list.
Mhm.
You seem to have already understood the difference. I think the windows were probably questionable from HTRC meeting.
Mhm.
Those windows, you could get a double insulated glass window, looks just like that and put in there, or you could go back to single strength glass, wood putty glazed window, just like that, with new balances on them where they'd operate and they wouldn't be falling out of the building. What's happened, folks, this building is in a fairly tough part of the neighborhood, and over the years, it's broke into numerous times. It's been a rental property for a lot of years, and it's not in the greatest condition because of that. The windows have all been broken out and repatched back together over time. The back windows, example, we don't have a photo of this, but has plywood over the windows. So they're so broken. So the windows definitely need help. I think it's up to the owner to decide what she wants. This is conceptual. So I'm very pleased with the conceptual staff's comments, and I don't think we've gone very far other than the rafter tails to change anything on it. Any other comment?
But I just wouldn't, listen, I'm fine with giving conceptual with the staff comments. I don't want to lead her down a path of board and batten's okay when we think it should remain cinder block on the wall, or lead her down the path of lap board's okay, when we think board and batten's okay, or, you know, lead her down the path of thinking that rafter tails are okay if we actually think that it should be boxed in. So I just want to be clear on, you know, she's going to develop, you know, you're going to develop what your final selections are and what you'd like it to see. I just want to make sure that if we give you an approval, we're not aligned.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that
don't
we're aligned.
contradict. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, in the end, because it's non-contributing, she can do what she wants. You know, the fact that you're willing to embrace the history of the building, I think you have to decide, is that what I want to do? Or do I want to go a different route? Because you can't really
Do both.
do both. But it's,
I think you're on a simpler approach with that concept of keeping it close to what it is. I think that's a good approach for this particular building. It sits oddly. There's, I think, 3 cinder block houses across the street from this
Mhm.
that are different orientation, different design, different porch styles.
Yeah, and they usually have some kind of siding on it, some kind of wood siding.
Yeah, so you can look at the street. There's also a very historic structure to the right of this one that we hope one day will get put together before it falls down. And then there's a contributing structure to the left that's, you know, got some problems, but it's still there. So this is sitting in a very interesting, odd juxtaposition of structures. There's nothing like it really on that street except cinder block. There is cinder block there.
Yeah, it's like you can make an argument that is super unique, but also super characteristic of the neighborhood. And I can see where both sides come from, you know what I mean? Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but like if it comes back now, you know.
Well, I think some things could help on this, and you'll probably do it anyways. Well, 2 things. It's been a rental property a long time, but there's been no care or landscaping or architect, you know, anything related to try to soften the front of this place or give it some character beyond the broken sidewalk. So it's like, I think features you do in addition to the house, or how do you improve the front image of that property? And the chain link fences are something we don't approve in that district anymore. So if you ever take them down, you can't put them back up. So,
Yeah, I don't like them either.
so
Well, but to your point, just briefly, you could keep it exactly the same. Like you were saying, put the exact same style windows in there, but make them fiberglass so they last. Put the same metal posts back, but take care of them so they last. Paint the CMU or the concrete block siding and maintain it so it lasts. Gussy up the landscaping. You could make it a very attractive little, I don't know if you're gonna use it for a rental or live in it or whatever, but you could make it very attractive little house and not change much if that's what you want to do. Or if you want to put board and batten on it, that's a completely different look, but.
No, there's the case for both. And I know you guys want like an answer or something like that. But let me think about it. And we have some ideas for the landscaping to make this look really cool. To put 2 parking pads in the front, but you know, that's for the future.
So is there enough here to give conceptual approval and then she can think about it and?
I think staff covered it pretty well, and I think, I don't hear an argument back from the applicant stating that anything is majorly wrong, so I think that at this point, a motion with staff comments would be appropriate.
I'm ready to make a motion and it's in order. I would, motion we would give them conceptual approval based on the staff comments as written.
I'll second that.
Motion second, any further comment, debate? Hearing none, call the vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, where do we end up? Lost my schedule here.
Should we just table the last one?
Was that a motion to table? Is that?
No, it was a question. It was interrogative.
All right.
Goodness.
All right, is this the final one?
There.
This is it. We're done pretty good here. So this is 101 Scott Street. So this is actually final approval. Sorry for the slight mix up on that. You've done a lot of discussion on this in the last few meetings, so I don't know that we need to go over all of that. So let's just go over the changes from preliminary and final and kind of the big issue that remains. So the applicant has provided a kind of a few slides kind of going over those three main changes. So those were to provide color renderings, typical sections, and restudy the elevation and topography of the site and determine if the base floor elevation is correct. And so they've provided the color renderings. Jeremy's going to that. They have provided the typical sections and details, and those were reviewed and I guess found suitable there. And then there was obviously a lot of discussion, as you can see in the report, and thoughts about the floodplain and the base floor elevation. So I think that's kind of the big thing here. So I think as you can see on the application, so this is below the 13 feet of the flood ordinance that we keep talking about today. They're bringing it up to 10 feet. And so right now, this is about 6 to 7 feet high. If you look at the fill requirement of section 5, 403 to 11, which is basically that not really supposed to go over 3 feet of fill. And so they're pretty much right at that. And again, the purpose of this was to try to figure out ways, especially for Ms. Petrello, who wasn't here in the last meeting, last few meetings, was to figure out ways to really lower that middle building. And so, how does that lower? I think they've almost lowered it about 3 feet from when this came to you conceptually, and was trying to figure out, looking at that base floor elevation, is there any other way to lower it there? Right. And so and to make sure that this was that everything was done to look at that. And so again, looking at the fill, that's the context of the fill, 3 feet. So they're pretty much right at what they can do. We kind of also looked at, so they have to provide the handicap ramps. We've kind of felt like if they could maybe gain a foot if they went, but they'd have to flood proof that, and they'd probably have to put another switchback in the handicap ramps. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense just to provide that extra foot. So we felt like this was probably with the 10 foot that they're proposing, probably the best case scenario. And that foot really doesn't provide any benefit to anyone. One thing and flood proofing more than 5 feet is never really recommended. It's not specific to the code, but that is just not recommended, from what I understand from our building official. The only thing that we found that really needed to be done is there was no notation or detail on the flood proofing that needed to be done for that 3 feet plus the 1 foot over. So that would need to be provided on the final plans. And other than that, those are the two recommendations. Otherwise, we think that the applicants met all of the conditions that you put on them at preliminary and conceptual. Again, looking back, the big concerns were the height of the middle section, which is kind of providing, I guess, access to the second story roof bar or deck there. Also, the other issues were, some of the final materials and base flood elevation. I'm trying to think what was the other big, oh yes, and the 100-foot width. And so they have shrunk that down to 99.5, so it would meet the code. So I think all those things have been done. The existing trees would be removed. They have to pay fee in lieu for those live oaks, but as you can see, it looks like they're proposing maybe some additional palmetto trees. But anyway, I think we've covered everything, and I'll stop and give it to the applicant.
Thank you. All right, so we'll ask the applicant, Mr. Berry, come up and tell us what he's got going on.
Thank you, Kurt, for making that easy for me in the introduction. Adam Beery, Buford Design Build. On behalf of Green's Drugstore, last time we were here, you left us with the 3 comments. Kurt went through those 3 comments. That was 3 comments from the Historic Review Board. We had 1 public comment that we also addressed that we want to point out. We enlarged the trash enclosure area on the plan. Jeremy, if you get us there. It's not huge, but it was taking that comment into consideration and enlarged it, doubled it in size. So there's something there, but that was a change that was made. The renderings were provided, colors were provided. We looked extensively at the finished floor elevation per your comments, Mr. Sutton. You're right, it was incorrect in the, not only the elevation drawings, but on the site plan. We've figured that the finished floor at the 10'2", not 13 feet as previously indicated. That brings the overall building height down essentially then 2'10". That does kick into account then dry flood proofing. We were aware of that when we did it. It's an extra expense for the developer, but it does bring that building down. It brings that porch down to where you're not sitting above people and looking down at the park, you're sitting with people looking out at the park. So that came in as a comment most recently here, beginning of the week. Fortunately enough, our flood proofing consultant was able to get us their information back. I had sent that over to Jeremy just a little bit ago. So what we're looking at for flood proofing, the drawing on the screen now shows the doors that will need or require the flood proofing. So it's the 2 front doors, the 2 side, or in the 3 or 4 side doors, 2 each side. And that would be 2 to the 3 foot height. Again, intentionally or unintentionally, the sill height of the window is set such that that's 13 feet. So we don't want to shrink that window any, and we can't, so that's where we're at. If that makes any sense. That's why the building's set. Other than that, I don't have much more to say. Open the comments.
Great, thank you very much. We'll let the public opine and we bring you back up, Mr. Berry, please. All right.
Good afternoon and a nice long day. Yeah. As you know, we've been in communication with Adam throughout this project and the work that he's done, and we're appreciative of the modifications that have been made to be able to reduce the perception of height with this project. The one recommendation that I think staff had made about modifying the parapet on the front, we actually disagreed with, and the reason we did is that design that Adam has presented is actually the character defining feature of that connects it with the history of the waterfront, connects it with the other warehouse and cotton house structures that were along our waterfront. Specifically, he had used as inspiration the Waterhouse cotton gin along the waterfront. So I think by removing that, then you lose that really, I think, important connection to the history. And this will probably be the last building, because this will be the last piece of non-public property where somebody can build in a location behind the Bay Street, strip of buildings. So it's critical that it does have that relationship. So we support the project and support him keeping that design as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll bring it up the board for review. This is for final with some actually pretty significant changes since the last, and mainly on elevation and which actually impacts the streetscape at the human level, at the human scale level. So y'all can see that. I kept the last drawing and compared it to the new one. I think you did a good job, Mr. Berry, of solving those problems. I love the fact that you've were able to set back the garbage collection area and then lengthen the depth of that to get the pitch right from the side street for that entry. So that actually, those two things combined helped the layout plus the public comment, which is very practical one about the garbage collection, because it is a problem down there, and I truly appreciate it. And I think if you ever build this building, it will definitely be benefit. I know that setback had some impact on your handicap ramp because you had to go up and you had to balance that against the grade. And then, of course, that triggered the flood proofing issues, which, you know, was not on the table at the last discussion, so we didn't bring it up. It was triggered by the code. It's required in the code. It's not something that we have a choice over as HRB. We're not gonna tell you, you don't have to do it. So you seem to have found middle ground there. It seems to work. So I'm good with that. I did have a question on, you know, the pictures are pretty when you do them like this and you see palm trees and things, that does soften that edge. But I'm not quite sure about the sidewalk and how that works with trees and the narrow lane you have there already and the setback. Is there enough room to actually do that landscaping?
So that would be. We're on the lot line if you look there. So that's going to be
City issue? Okay. You put it on your picture, but that's gonna be up to the city to do.
we'd like the city to consider.
Okay. All right, so we can assume that the trees aren't gonna be there, so when you look at that picture, make sure there's no trees in your mind, okay?
We have a representative from the city here?
So, any other comment, I mean, please opine, guys, on anything you see here.
I have a question about the windows. What is the color of the glass?
That's a valid question. Currently, we have the black windows, but the glass has not been selected. That wasn't ever an issue or a thought, but that is a very valid point.
Yeah, I mean, I love the windows that you selected, but the thing that always scares me about black framed windows is that they tend, especially if you know, depending on the type of glass that goes into them, they look like big black holes on a building.
No doubt.
And I think downtown, I mean, you know, in this environment, I don't know that that's very appropriate. So I was wondering if there was a way to, whether they put like a light colored shade on the inside so you can actually see the grill.
So they will be, it's an Anderson A series, if I'm not mistaken. East, where's that at, Jeremy? Isn't it the Anderson E series? So it would be selected from their standard glass selections. I mean, we're not going to ask them for special glass, but
right,
it would be selected from them. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I hope they're not going to be really dark.
Do our best not to make them dark. We want it to be lit just as, you know, light as I would assume you would. I mean, we don't want it to look dark.
This is your first meeting. If you are, you know, if you feel strongly about that, when you're making a motion, you could make this is final approval, you can make a recommendation that applicant make every effort to lighten the appearance of however you wish to frame it and see if you get a second.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it could be a condition. Yeah.
Do you agree or disagree?
I think it's a good point. I didn't think about that. I don't know what glass options there are for the Anderson E series, but I would, is he pulling this up? What is this?
Sorry, this is just what's on Adam's presentation. So these are the options. Of course, there's no visible imagery to go with it, but
I just think it would be really nice to be able to see the window and not the big black hole.
Yeah,
They are so nice.
comment.
My overall take on the project is they've done everything we asked. I think it looks great. I liked the project from the beginning conceptually. I think the elevation thing that was brought up in the last meeting, which has now been dealt with, basically brought the entire building down 3 feet almost. So I think a lot of the contention previously, I know Rita's not here, but one of her main contentions was the overall size, which they had reduced previously by almost a foot, and now an additional 3 feet just topographically. I think, I mean, I'm in support of the project.
And I have another question, one other thing about, you show flood vents, but you show a monolithic slab on the design. What's the flood vents doing?
It would be a faux flood vent.
Okay.
They're not real.
You felt that was important to do?
We did.
Okay.
I'll make a few comments. I'm generally in favor. I think it would be unfortunate if the trees that are shown in this illustration couldn't be. I know there's limited area there, but it certainly helps to soften the building and create a nice streetscape or alleyscape. So, maybe there's a way to work between the developer and the city, try to make that happen. If not to this degree, something maybe similar or close. I would agree that the scale of the building continued to come down from day one, which I think we'd all agree was positive, and the almost 3 foot reduction from the last version was significant. So I'm glad they were able to make that happen. Really in favor of it. And
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I'm not certain it's coming down at all. I mean, I think it's a topography issue and a flood zone. I don't think the building really got reduced that much because it's still showing almost 50 foot tall at the ridge line. It's 47 and some change at the parapet wall cap, and that's kind of where we were.
Well, I think what I'm saying, there's
So where you are.
there's like the nominal height and then there's the relative height. And I think the relative height, the nominal height hasn't changed, but the relative height to Bay Street has come down.
Well, the
is my
problem I have with it, though, is it exceeds almost every building on Bay Street. It actually becomes the tallest structure at the ridge line, even though that's semantics at this point. I'm gonna support it, but I'm telling you that there's been lots of battles in the past about height. And the old code had a 50 foot maximum height. Now, new code would have allowed this building probably without the flood issues related to be up about 53 feet based on the height of the interior floor spaces and things you need to recover to do a building. They've got it down best they can, but you're not fooling the citizens of Beaufort that this is not gonna be a big building. So I remember discussions about the buildings being designed behind the Verdeer House, for example, you wouldn't be able to see, this church steeples from the bridge. Well, same thing applies here. You won't see the Verdeer House from coming over the bridge when this is built. So it's an odd situation where we have a developer that we're okay with. He meets the code, right? Well, isn't that what we always say? It meets the code, but we also have to have the review process in order because that's part of the code as well. So I'm very supportive of the building, and I would happy to see it actually get built, because often or not, the economy changes and things don't happen. And we go through all these gyrations and the citizens get upset. And believe me, I've had a few phone calls, but it's like, our job is not to stop progress and stop development. It's to review the architecture and make sure that it fits. This is a beautiful looking building. I don't particularly like the tall connector, but it is a good looking building. And I just hope that, Mr. Trask, I hope you actually build this thing, okay? So, thank you. I don't have any other comments on it. I think they've covered it.
Well, I think I think you have to make your inaugural motion on this one.
So.
The biggest one here.
At what point will we, I mean, I honestly would really love to see what the glass is gonna look like, but I agree. Sure. I want to be able to see the window.
So do you want clear glass?
Now, all I'm saying is that most of the time that I look at a black window,
Yeah.
for
A-
whatever reason,
A
whatever
black
they.
framed window.
Black frame window.
Yeah.
You don't see the frame. It ends up being so dark that, especially during the day, if there's no light behind it, it just looks like a big dark.
So what's the solution?
I don't know, and that's what I'm trying to find out. I mean, because I would love to see.
It's a
those-
clear, we were expecting clear glass.
Yeah.
In the
I just
window.
want to be able to see the window, because it's a nice window.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. We did not, at least I didn't envision black or dark glass. It would not be tinted glass. It's
That-
clear glass.
Is it the bronze frame with the clear glass, or is it, are you do actual black?
Black frame, clear glass.
Clear glass.
Argon ideal.
Okay, was that the question? Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, it looks very dark in the pictures, so I wasn't sure. And okay,
Just,
thank you.
yeah, her point, which I think resonates with me more, is that the massing changes when you do black over with the glass. So you really don't see the division in the glass. So all you really see from a distance is a big square, right? So it's like it's an open building. So I get that. And that's something we talk about in the massing of structures. I think interior lighting and shades, things like that will impact that as well.
So mandate the tenants put lamps by the windows.
I've seen it change black to white and it looked good on the frame, on the trim detail, you know, it completely changed the look of the building. I don't know how it would look here, but I'm not gonna ask you to do that. Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve. Do you want to do it? You
I
do
would
it.
make
You
a
do it.
motion to approve final approval,
Staff comments?
staff comments with, yes, with the staff comments, recommendations.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion on the table for final. A second, any other comment? Hearing none?
Aye.
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 Okay. Congratulations, Mr. Berry, Mr. Trask.
Remember, reminder, July 19th, 9 o'clock, we were gonna have a.
July 19th.
July 19th, next Friday.
And you guys are providing all food and beverage and transportation to and from the site and.
Not transportation, but if anybody needs a parking pass, you need to tell me. So.
So we go inside and get a parking back. We're meeting down at the digital quarter.
Well, we are gonna be at the landing pad, but if you'd like to meet and do a little tour ahead of time, we need to coordinate that, but otherwise, the lunch and everything else and the landing pad are coordinated.
So the time again was what time?
9 o'clock.
9 AM on the 19th
If you all want to meet at like a coffee shop or something instead.
at the landing pad.
Landing pad.
Hey, look, I've got one, hey, Grady, before y'all leave it, before we adjourn, we may have already by default. Look, we have a new member. The question is officer selection. Do we need to opine on that?
That came up, this morning, and I think, as we read the, development code that, the officers were selected in November. The reason being that Jeremiah, if you remember, was the chairman. He was the new, like Mr. Berman, Grady were, keep saying Grady, Mr. Woods, were, appointed in, October. So their first meeting was November. So since Jeremiah was chairman, that chairman election was done in November. So the way that we interpret it, this November, you will be electing a new chairman.
So we got-
You just, since you were elected and you were, it is not dependent on your election or appointment by the board or by the city council. It's
I just want to
actually
be fair
your
to the
term
peers
here.
up here that if we get new members
Yeah.
on and we want to reappoint, I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
Just,
so the plan now is November, you would have your yearly election.
Move to adjourn, accepted?
Excellent.
Adjourn.